apologize for the break. We have fixed the technical issue. So we will go ahead and get back to the meeting.
So we're gonna move right along here. Section 1850 is the existing residential housing code. Any rental property in Salt Lake City, this is the standard for maintenance and repair. Our proposed changes are rather rudimentary for the first item. When it was originally created in 95, it referenced the Uniform Building Code. We're going to change those references to ICC, the International Construction Code, adopted by the state. We also want to change the method of delivery for our notices. Right now they have to go U.S. Postal Service certified mail. We're asking for the ability to send them by any reputable mail service, which could be FedEx, UPS, or et cetera. And right now, appeals of 1850 go to the Housing Advisory Appeals Board. We're proposing they now, that in the future, they would be sent to the Board of Appeals. That's all of 1850.
1824 is a proposal that we are actually proposing to add enforcement penalties for civil enforcement for construction projects. Currently, we do not have any sort of enforcement. We've actually tried to utilize 21A, the zoning enforcement, in the past. We are just proposing that we actually use enforcement similar to civil enforcements already adopted in 21A and just put it into Title 18. There's fees that you can see up there that we're proposing for those various violations. That's it. Any questions? Any of this?
Any questions?
So if I have, if I'm having an ADU that I'm using illegally, and what kind of violation per day is that? What would that be, a general violation or?
So if it's the operation of the ADU, that would be a civil enforcement zoning penalty under 21A.
Yes, okay.
The changes to 1850 would only apply to the construction of that building.
Okay, correct. So if I have a housing violation, a toilet's not working or something like that, what would the penalty be for that?
So that would, under the existing 1850, the $25 a day up to 10 violations for minor violations on a housing inspection by one of our housing inspectors.
And that's going up to $50 per day.
Okay, thank you.
For the boarded up houses, like you said, I think there's 121. Do those people actually pay the existing fines? How many or is it just all go to small claims court?
The majority are sending us checks.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay, cool. And then I had one other question just about the Board of Appeals and Examiners. Is the change in that to match state law or just because of practicality and trouble staffing with that?
So the Board of Appeals is planning to be implemented to create a more universal approach to appeals for all of building services requests.
Okay.
Instead of one method for civil enforcement, a different method for building permits. We plan to consolidate that for across our programs.
Okay. And it says that it's going to be just one, I forget the word, but one hearing officer. How are they appointed, or where do they kind of come from?
So this is one of those, administrative efficiency things that will help us. Staffing is an issue, has been an issue. That 5-member board, it's tough to get, that many qualified people available to us at any given time. So the structure will still be, as required by building code, the building official to be an ex officio member, and then we will have an appeal hearing officer, which is exactly how enforcement of zoning is done by an appeal hearing officer. That person is nominated by the mayor, and then it's advised and consent of the city council.
Okay. I think that was all I had on that. That's just it's the board I originally applied to when I was doing this, because I think it's an important one, so I just want to make sure it's still functioning, that's all.
Any other questions?
I'm just wondering if any of the increased fees will make it so that you can hire more enforcement personnel.
They're not meant to hire more personnel. They're really meant to incentivize property owners to come into compliance.
How do you usually learn of a property that needs enforcement?
So are we talking about just any property?
Yeah.
Or usually a complaint. We respond to complaints.
And it says up to 14,000 would be the new. How do you decide between like nothing and 14,000?
That's a great question, and it might be a question for City Council. So they asked for this fee increase. Right now, the annual fee is $1,546, and we're recommending that they increase it up to $14,000.
Oh, I see. So city council would determine the actual number. I see. Thank you very much.
We'll go ahead and open up the public comment on this item. Is there anyone who would like to speak on this item? Seeing no one, any emails? We'll go ahead and close the public hearing on this item and bring it back to the commission for questions and a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion. Based on the information presented and discussed, I move that the commission recommend that the city council approve this text amendment proposal.
I'll second the motion.
We have a motion from Commissioner Scheer and a second from Commissioner Tuttle. Any discussion to the motion? We'll take a vote. Commissioner Kratzik,
Yes.
Commissioner Burrows,
Yes.
Commissioner Barry,
Yes.
Commissioner Gale,
Yes.
Commissioner Tuttle,
Yes.
Commissioner Scott,
Yes.
Commissioner Scheer,
Yes.
and the chair also votes yes. That passes unanimously and moves on to council. We will go ahead and move to item number 1 on the agenda, Capitol Park Cottages Plan Development and Preliminary Subdivision Plat. Case numbers PLN PCM 2021-00656 and PLN SUB 2021-00175. And our planner is Aaron Barlow.
Good evening, Commissioners. Chair Christensen. So my goal tonight is to provide an overview of the proposal and inform you prior to your decision. So the request before you today is for a plan development and preliminary plat of a 21-unit development comprising of single-family and twin home dwellings. The project also includes 1 external accessory dwelling unit and up to 20 internal ADUs. An overview here you can see on the screen lays out what is going on. There's also 82 parking spaces proposed when 63 are required. With this request, the applicant is asking for a number of modifications to zoning regulations, specifically lots that don't front a public street, the minimum lot area for a lot, the minimum width of a lot, front, rear, and interior side yard setbacks, the maximum coverage of a building on a lot, and the width of driveways. And staff is recommending approval with conditions. So the project is located at the corner of F Street and Capitol Park Avenue. Properties within the vicinity include, to the south, the Meridian condominiums at the old VA hospital. To the west, single-family houses on Caring Cove that were approved through plan development. To the north, North Point Estates, a townhouse-style private community. And to the east, single-family houses and a duplex. The property is currently vacant and has been for some time. There we go. And there are multiple mature trees on the site that are varying in levels of health. Let's see. Here we have some views of adjacent properties. To this home on the left is the property to the west, immediately abutting the subject property. And on the right there is the Meridian Condominiums directly across Capitol Park Avenue, the owners of Capitol Park Avenue, which is a private street. Let's see. Units adjacent to F Street and Capitol Park Avenue would face outward in orientation typically found in the avenues. Units not fronting a street would face the walking path that runs along the project's perimeter. Yeah, I will go back. All right. Units adjacent to F Street and Capitol Park Avenue would face outwards in orientation typically found in the avenues. Units not fronting a street would face the walking path that would run along the project's perimeter. The plans for the proposal under review today were submitted in July 2023. Since that time, staff has worked with the applicant, recognized community organizations, and the public to solicit feedback and ensure the project is in compliance with all necessary regulations. Specifically, there was an open house by the applicant in August, and planning staff worked with the Preserve Our Avenues Coalition on a number of... Is my microphone working? Are you guys able to hear me okay? All right, I'll get close to it. I'm eating it at this point.
Yep.
All right. And staff worked with the Preserve Our Avenues Coalition on a number of issues that are they listed out in the staff report in the comments section. So this proposal meets two plan development objectives that are fulfilled through the requested modifications. The open space and natural lands objective by clustering of development to preserve some open space, and the housing objective by providing housing types that are not commonly found within the neighborhood but are of a typical scale for that neighborhood. So the staff is recommending approval with the condition listed on the screen. Specifically that signage indicating that the proposed open space is public and that the accessory building on lot 21 must be an ADU. And the applicant is here and ready to answer questions. Chris Gambroulis and Eric Oseth will be presenting. They have also brought Dr. Chris Nelson, Professor Emeritus at the University of Arizona School of Planning and Architecture. Thank you.
Aaron, could you put up a map in the interim showing us the number? Which one is number 21?
Oh yeah, of course. All right, so lot number 21 is this lot in the top right here. There is a separate structure here with the ADU. And in order for the dimensions that they are proposing to meet zoning, that has to be an ADU. It cannot be any other type of accessory use within that structure.
Thank you. Let's go ahead and have the applicant come forward. You can ask a question during the public comment.
So, Chris Gambroulis, Ivory Development. I've got Eric Ost from UDA. Peter Gambroulis. Yeah, he's not my brother. It's my nephew. The site was rezoned in late 2022 by the City Council after a positive recommendation from the Planning Commission. It was a much lower density zone prior to that, and the city staff, Planning Commission, City Council, recognizing that the Avenues really is a very diverse, demographically diverse and architecturally diverse neighborhood, agreed to upzone the property. And so with that, the density was settled, and what was left was to come up with the right design. The initial plan that we had submitted with our initial application, we abandoned that about 18 months before the Planning Commission hearing. It was, it became something that everyone was focused on as opposed to the land use. And once the property was rezoned, we went to a different planning firm, architectural firm that we have a lot of experience with, UDA out of Pittsburgh, to reimagine the site and what it would look like and how can we use the topography. So go to the next slide. Everybody in the state of Utah knows that there's lots going on and lots of conversations around housing and housing affordability and just the production of more housing. Go ahead. There are stories every week in the news about these conversations. Recently been an audit with a lot of recommendations. It was a legislative audit to recommend some strategies around floor area ratios and reducing side yard setbacks and those kinds of things. Then the top left, you know, the governor, it was, you're not unique. The governor rips Utah cities. Go to the next slide. He did not rip Salt Lake City because Salt Lake City's already been doing this back in 2018. And the guiding document that guided our application initially was the city housing plan to upzone areas of the city. And the city just, as you know, recently, go ahead, I'm gonna go fast. Go ahead. And on the left is the Envision Utah study and report that just came out on behalf of the Department of Workforce Services, the state, and information from the Kempsey Gardner Policy Institute. The photo on the left, the cover of the Envision Utah study, is actually an ivory home in South Jordan, and it's a home that in a master plan community that was designed by UDA. So we didn't ask them to put that. They just used the photo of our home on the cover of their study. I just wanted to point that out. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Eric Ost.
Thank you, Chris, and I want to thank the Commission for the opportunity to speak today. A year ago when Ivory Homes, there we go. There we go. When Ivory Homes reached out to us, we recognized this is an opportunity to develop a site that really fits within the patterns of this particular neighborhood. We established a series of design principles of which we were to work with under when we first started that. And one was to merge with the neighborhood character, develop a custom design for this site, consider the significant grade and take that into the design, capture all the parking required on the site, and of course provide ample parking for homes and for the visitors. When we look at the site from an aerial perspective, you can see that open space, that open lot right there, in a neighborhood that is largely single family, but also a lot of other mix of uses and a number of other different buildings of various scale. And as you zoom in, you can start to see there was the beautiful City Creek open space around it, but when you start to zoom in, you can see right across the street, there's the beautiful Meridian condominium building, which really serves, it was once a hospital, it really serves, it's almost like a civic building in that neighborhood. It's the landmark which you use to kind of cognitively recognize where you are in the neighborhood. So we were really thinking about how do we develop a project and a proposal that really respects the neighborhood around it and the building and the Meridian across the street, which has been beautifully restored, beautiful scale to it as well. All the neighborhoods around in this particular area, both the avenues, Capitol Hill, and Harvard Yale, are neighborhoods that we've been looking at for a long time. These neighborhoods have an incredible human scale. Buildings that have been built over time, many different styles are apparent there. But one thing that is true is that when you see a lot of homes like these, they were actually built by pattern books by builders. Oftentimes they were built before the automobile, so you approach the homes from the street. The door and the home itself is the most prominent part. They were also very different from the homes next to them. You can see sometimes they're actually very close together, as you can see in the building, the photograph on the right of these homes. We took these photographs in 2005 in the Capitol Hill neighborhood during one of our documentation trips, and various different styles are present, and we recognize with so many styles, these three styles are some of the most recognizable styles, and some of the best examples are arts and crafts, European Romantic and Colonial Revival styles, which we brought into our study for this particular site. These are some analysis drawings that we did of the site, and you can see the green lines represent sidewalks within the neighborhood. We're just kind of doing an analysis there. We recognize that there aren't any sidewalks on the site, and an opportunity we wanted to provide public access to the site. So we started with this framework. These are the sidewalks that we recommended to be introduced for the site to be publicly accessible. This is one of our drawings in X-ray of building form. These are all the footprints off of GIS of the buildings in the neighborhood, and you can see the very fine grain of the small residential homes, as well as you can very clearly right there, you can see the Meridian across the street is a very large building. One approach could be to develop a large building, but we wanted to be very respectful of the neighborhood patterns around us. So our building forms were to kind of merge with the residential patterns of the neighborhood, as you can see in this slide here. The site does have a significant amount of grade, and we wanted to use grade in mind in developing the typologies to accommodate that. We developed an open space framework to allow public access in and around the site and to connect the neighbors on the north side with the neighbors on the south and provide access to the neighborhood around us. This is the illustrative plan, putting those things together, and then our site plan and program for 21 units of both single family and twin homes with ADUs. These are some of the street facades. We did select some of these traditional styles, and because when you put them side by side, we have an individual identity of each home. Also, the various different styles provided opportunity for different roof lines to create a pattern of unique homes within the neighborhood, very similar to what you see in the avenues and around in the Capitol Hill neighborhood and even in the Harvard-Yale neighborhoods. These are some of our elevations as well, and some of our twin home options, which we see quite often in the particular neighborhood, and trying to bring the roof lines down to kind of give a sense of individual identity for each home. Even the side facades take advantage. Oftentimes that's neglected. We are trying to bring the character of the front around to the sides. So going back to the neighborhood character, these are homes that were built over many, many years, all looking very different. And the way these kind of line up together, you can see they're very close together, but still creating that individual identity, really went into some of the renderings and some of the thought process as we designed this particular proposal. Even looking at that internal street, which we definitely thought about creating residential front doors on the perimeter, parking within, having this particular site have an opportunity to have both digest the cars to the interior of the site and having front doors facing the public environment. So in a proposal summary, we have 27 units are permitted, 21 are proposed. This is really a custom designed master plan and architecture for this site. We recognized immediately we couldn't take a project or some effort we did somewhere else and drop this in here. It was really custom designed for the site. Homes were also inspired very much by the neighborhood around us, and all the parking is accommodated on site. Thank you very much. We look forward to your questions.
Thank you. Any questions from the commission?
I just have a really quick question on the ADUs. Are they going to be built no matter what, or are you going to pre-sell the home and then the owner decides if you want to build it?
Yeah, how it's finished out will be determined by the ultimate buyer, but the intent is to design them all with an opportunity to have the ADU.
Gotcha. And so, and Aaron, then the only lot that is going to require that building to be used as an ADU is lot 21, because some of them may be built, but that doesn't mean that they'll actually be a rented out ADU. Gotcha.
Can I just address that point real quick? And that is that, and even the city recognizing to take the ADUs out of the conditional use process, just recently. But the idea is every ADU does not have to be used as a rental to still be an ADU. And in the life cycle of homes, parts of homes are used differently in their different life cycles. And so the creation of the opportunity to do that here, and to make it a focus of it, as opposed to just making it something that is not intentional. Only about 5% of our buyers in a typical year ask us to do some kind of an ADU, and we're trying to increase that number.
Well, let's go ahead and open the public hearing. Oh, one more.
Yeah, so I just have a question about trees. There's quite some concern with trees on the property. And I want to just touch base on like, are some of those trees able to be preserved under your current planning, and what percentage, if any? Kind of tell me a little bit more about your plan for the trees on this property.
There's not going to be an opportunity to preserve the trees. Big cluster of them on F Street are actually in the public right of way. And the reality is to develop the site with an internal road and to minimize the retaining walls and to meet your Rubik's Cube of a height ordinance that you have with in your residential housing. It is one of the most complex height ordinances in the country, and to do that we have an original grade, an established grade, and then a final grade. And the reality is there's just no way for us to be able to offer to save any of the trees. If during the development it's possible to do that, then we'll do it. But the city does have a tree replacement ordinance. We do pay a fee, and trees are replaced in the city on a 2-to-1 basis. And the fee here is,
well, we'd have to look at it. It's 2-to-1 on diameter and breast height. And so for whatever inch of tree we'll be removing, we'll be replacing that at a 2-to-1. And so
of diameter tree. Yeah. So if a tree is 15 inches in diameter, there will be 30 1-inch caliber trees planted in the city, and we'll pay a fee to the city to buy those trees and get them planted.
So I have a question for Aaron, for the staff. Sorry, I'll talk into the microphone more. This plan development, many of the things which are exceptions to the zoning are because it's a plan development. Can you explain again what the objectives are that this one meets that will qualify it for plan development?
Yeah, there are, this is a hotter microphone. There are two objectives that are facilitated by the modifications requested by this plan development, specifically the open space. They're clustering that open space to be public that would otherwise be used, that would otherwise be within a yard, a backyard, a front yard. And they are also expanding those setbacks to accommodate that space so that there can be both an ADU and a family-sized home, which is three plus bedrooms per unit within a structure.
So there's two objectives that it meets out of the objectives that it has to, could possibly meet.
Yeah, it only needs to meet one, but staff
Only needs to be one,
Yeah.
but there are two in this particular case. So one of them has to do with housing numbers, and one of them has to do with open space clustering. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the commission? Let's go ahead and open up the public. Oh, go ahead and stay at the table. Yeah. Let's go ahead and open the public hearing. We first off have a series of cards that were submitted, and the first two speakers are from recognized community organizations. So the first two speakers will get 5 minutes each. Our first speaker is Jim Jekin. Go ahead and approach the microphone, and you'll have 5 minutes. And state your name for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am Jim Jenkin, as the chair of the Land Use Committee of the Greater Avenues Community Council. I have been asked to brief the commission on previous community council actions regarding this application. I would like to stress that Avenues residents have been following the proposed development by Ivory Homes closely since the initial application in 2022. Ivory's proposal was most recently reviewed at the August 2nd, 2023 Greater Avenues Community Council meeting. The Salt Lake City Planning Division and Ivory Homes were both invited, but both declined to attend. Ivory instead chose to hold their own informational meeting at the Sweet Library on 9th Avenue and F Street on 23 August 2023.
Sir,
Can you please hold the microphone up to your, yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Better?
Yeah.
Okay. Really? Okay. 2 prior votes have been held by the GACC on this topic, both of which attracted a record number of participants via Zoom, and both of which demonstrated that Avenue's residents were overwhelmingly opposed to Ivory's proposal. A 3rd vote to gauge public opinion on this development was held at the September 6th GACC meeting. Voting was restricted to Avenue's residents and business owners and was conducted via in-person paper ballot or via Zoom voting. The wording of the ballot was, do you approve of Ivory Homes' request for a planned development at 675 North F Street as presented in their application to the city dated June 2023? The results of the ballot were 213 opposed to a planned development and 7 in favor. Then GACC Chair Marilyn Lee Morgan, communicated these results in an email dated September 12, 2023, and addressed to Aaron Barlow et al. Although Ivory has revised their plans since the September vote, the changes are fairly minimal, and the rationale for the planned development is essentially the same, so I would argue the votes are still appropriately valid. These comments have also been submitted in writing by email to Aaron Barlow.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Peter Wright, representing Preserve Our Avenues Coalition. State your name for the record, and you'll have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening. I am Peter Wright. As you may recall, in December 2022, the city agreed to rezone this lot from FR3 to SR1. The rezone more than doubled the number of lots. Not content with the rezone, Ivory now asks for a planned development to gain even more lots and proposes the addition of a novel, first of its kind, subdivision of ADUs. Collectively, this will more than quadruple the number of dwellings and cars. This quadrupling is highly problematic for this foothills lot, bordering only one public street in a non-walkable section of the city, and fails to comply with a number of city ordinances. Firstly, Ivory's proposal fails to comply with the purpose statement for the SR1 district with respect to scale and intensity. It also fails to meet the city definition of compatible land use, which specifies that development intensity, building coverage, bulk, occupancy, and traffic generation be consistent with and similar to neighboring uses. In your packs, you should find a detailed analysis demonstrating that Ivory's proposal is at least 2.5 times the development intensity of the neighboring SR1 zone. Secondly, a subdivision of ADUs is not the same as a single ADU and brings into play many considerations that would not apply to a single ADU. There is no provision in any of the city ordinances that considers a subdivision of ADUs. And the city has not followed due process in considering such a new and novel use. 21A50 details the required process for adopting new land uses: a draft proposal, public comment, a review and recommendation by the Planning Commission, and a further review by the City Council. Ivory's proposal seeks to shortcut this process. The issues surrounding a subdivision of ADUs are complex and nuanced and deserve due process as required by law. Lastly, Ivory's planned development claims are quite frankly laughable. A sidewalk is not a trail, and the open space Ivory claims to preserve by clustering is all unbuildable land. Also, Ivory can build the physical infrastructure of potential ADUs without a planned development. So what is this application really about? It's about clustering. It's about using the plan development process to reduce setbacks and increase building lot coverage so Ivory can cram oversized houses onto shrunken lots for financial gain. This is why Ivory asked to cluster buildings. It has nothing to do with preserving open space. Please take a look at the site plan and ask yourself if you see much open space anywhere. 90 feet long, 2-story houses 10 feet apart. Houses twice the size of those normal in the SR1 district. Front, rear, and side yard setbacks all reduced to a fraction of those in the SR1 zone. 0 yard space. A cramped and congested, dense, high-intensity development with insufficient space for resident and guest parking. The only parking Ivory provides for ADU residents is on the driveways of the primary residence. This is not a practical solution. Ivory has already benefited from a rezone that doubles the number of lots, and the city has already gained a sizable increase in density via the rezone. Ivory should not further benefit from a planned development that seeks to so grossly overbuild this property, out of character with the neighborhood and in violation of city codes. My time is up. Thank you for listening, and thank you for your service to our city.
Thank you. Next up, we have Craig Smith. No, we
It's going to be hard for me to see and look at my nose standing up there. And
I'll grant this request once. Go ahead and have a seat there. State your name for the record, and you'll have 2 minutes.
thank you. My name's Craig Smith. I'm an attorney. I work
Get closer to the microphone, please.
My name is Craig Smith. I'm an attorney. I work at the firm of Smith Harvickson. And in my career, I've had a very unique opportunity, which is I've practiced land use and water law for 40 years, and I've had an opportunity to represent both developers and property owners and local governments. Currently, my firm provides all land use legal support for all of the townships in this valley. So, what I say is unique is that's rarely done. I've had a chance to see things from different perspectives for different clients. I guess a couple things that I think are kind of important here that I don't think have been brought out is there is no entitlement to any modification by Ivory. You are not required, this is not a check the box. If they check this one box and they say, well, we're providing open space, which I really don't think they are, when I see their plan, 2 thoughts come to my mind. Can of sardines, shoehorn. And if that doesn't come to your minds, you live in a different world than I do. Because, and I don't want to, say too much, but I would bet $100, or I'd bet my house. Well, I don't really have a house, but my wife has. But I would bet that number one goal of the architects and engineers is cram as many units as you can into this space. Didn't hear anything about that, but that's what they're doing, because that's what they're cramming, as many possible units as they can in this space. And they say they meet these various planning goals. I don't see it, frankly. And because, again, let's start with the open space.
That's 2 minutes.
Thank you.
Alan Hayes. Yes. Alan Hayes.
Just a reminder to the public, please no clapping or cheering.
State your name for the record, and you'll have 2 minutes.
Good evening. I'm Alan Hayes. At the June 2022 Planning Commission hearing, after you approved Ivory's application for a rezone, members of the Planning Commission admonished Ivory, and I quote, to return with a plan with not too many exceptions, end quote. and cautioned that you would not look favorably at a planned development application that requires significant further concessions. But this is how Ivory has responded. In the current plan, not a single lot conforms with SR1 zone requirements. For maximum building coverage, which is capped at 40%, 19 of 21 do not comply. For front yard setbacks, 16 of 21 lots do not comply. Rear yard setbacks, 16 of 21 do not comply. Interior side yard setbacks, 14 of 19 lots do not comply. It seems Ivory was not listening to the advice from the commissioners. Ivory asked for so many zone concessions that this development is no longer recognizable as being part of the SR1 zone. Every building parameter is maximized while setbacks are consistently reduced. Scale, bulk, and intensity are much greater than the established SR1A homes in the surrounding blocks, the nearest zone. We are asked to accept large, long, two-story buildings on shrunken lots with minimal setbacks, most with only 10 feet between buildings. This is a very congested development that does not blend in with this neighborhood. Most of the problems with this design are caused by too many large buildings. I implore the Planning Commission to reduce the number of buildings to make this development less congested and more livable. Thank you. We appreciate your hard work on behalf of the city.
Thank you. Next up, we have Scott Young. State your name for the record, and you'll have 2 minutes.
I am Scott Young, a resident of Capitol Park. After already receiving multiple concessions from the city, Ivory wants more. Ivory is now requesting the city to grant a planned development designation. For this designation, the city ordinance requires Ivory to achieve specified objectives. Ivory's primary justification for a planned development is that Ivory claims to be providing ADUs. Ivory's claim is a fallacy. It is a Trojan horse. First, the city's ADU regulations apply to homeowners, not to developers. If the city wants the ADU regulations to apply to developers, the city needs to amend their regulations. Second, if the city were to allow Ivory as a developer to build ADUs, Ivory can do that under the current SR1 zoning. Since SR1 already allows ADUs, Ivory's potential ADUs cannot be used as a basis to justify a planned development. Finally, Ivory does not commit to build any ADUs. So what is Ivory up to? It is not to provide affordable housing, that's a joke, and it is not to provide open space, that's a joke. Ivory's houses will cost over $2 million each, and Ivory's ADUs will rent for over $1,500 per month each. Ivory's real reason, they want planned development designation to reduce setbacks, expand building lot coverage, and overpack the property with large, expensive homes and ADUs, all so that Ivory can maximize profit. That's what it's about, money. Ivory is putting lipstick on a pig and hoping that you, the commission, will buy it. Ivory's application should be denied. Thank you for your time and your service.
Thank you. Paul McKinnon. State your name for the record, and you'll have 2 minutes.
I will, thank you. My name is Paul McKinnon. I live in the Meridian. The city ordinance for planned development requires the applicant meet one or more of 6 specific objectives. And I would like to address one of those objectives. Ivory's claim that they have clustered buildings in order to preserve nearly an acre of open land. This claim is so misleading. Section 1 and, the land Ivory claims they are preserving consists of 4 parts shown in the handout that I gave out earlier. Section 1 and Section 2 were mandated as open space by the City Council as a condition of rezone. Ivory had no choice. Section 2 is also a drainage pond that couldn't be built on anyway. Section 3 is not even Ivory land. It's the right-of-way for F Street. Section 4 is a thin strip of unbuildable land with a 33-degree slope bordering on North Point's boundary wall. Ivory doesn't cluster buildings to preserve land. They only preserve land that they can't use. You know what this application is about? It's really about reducing setbacks, increasing lot coverage, cram more oversized buildings into shrunken lots. Ivory rhetoric is like a game of three-card Monte, where sleight of hand and misleading commentary hide what's really being proposed. Ivory has already benefited from a rezone that doubles the number of lots. They shouldn't further benefit from an application for this planned development that overbuilds this lot. But you know, for Ivory, it's never enough. You know what we want, an SR1 development with normal setbacks and yard space, not this high-intensity development with no yard and excessive hard set. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Joel Ditton. State your name for the record, and you'll have 2 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Joel Deaton. I would like to discuss the Ivory claim that they produce a network of trails that provide recreational opportunities and therefore a public benefit. This claim was discussed with 163 residents that live closest to this development. Not a single person indicated that they would ever use those so-called trails, and none felt that they provided any public benefit. Most, in fact, thought this claim was laughable. Much of the northern section, a footpath required to access Ivory houses, is sandwiched in a 10 feet wide gap between an 8.5 foot high retaining wall and 28 foot tall houses. This was considered to be claustrophobic and not a pleasant place to walk. Other parts of the northern section pass 5 feet from the front of Ivory houses, and people felt that they would be invading the privacy of Ivory residents by walking there. The western portion, situated 2 feet from a tall fence with Caring Cove as their border, it would be considered cramped and unpleasant to walk. The section on F Street, a sidewalk, is not even on Ivory land, but is actually city land. This section with a 12% grade is one of the steepest streets in the avenues and extremely hard to walk, almost impossible in winter. In summary, residents feel that there are far nicer walks pretty much everywhere in the avenues, and considered that these sidewalks, mischaracterized as trails, would only ever be used by Ivory residents to access their homes. They provide no public benefit, and this claim justification for a planned development is invalid. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, we have Larry Perkins. State your name for the record, and you'll have 2 minutes.
Thanks. Larry Perkins is my name. According to the Planned Development Ordinance, the bedrock principle for approval of a planned development is that it produces a better result than would be obtainable by strict application of the district zoning laws. The Planned Development Ordinance uses the term, quote, an enhanced product, unquote, to describe this fundamental principle. Although the plan you've seen is clearly designed for enhanced profitability, the 163 people that were surveyed according to the previous speaker, 163 of those did not judge this to be an enhanced product. If you look at the Ivory plot plan, you see oversized 90-foot long buildings, no yards, front setbacks as low as 3 feet from the sidewalk, buildings that cover way in excess of the normal percentage of the land, no yards, no space allocated to basic needs such as snow storage, in the winter for plows and so on. Insufficient space for parking, unless you wind up parking in driveways and blocking in the cars that are in the garages. 20-foot wide access road that's too narrow for parking and problematic for emergency vehicles. This is a highly cramped, congested development. Residents ask that you please, please, please send Ivory back to the drawing board to produce something that looks like the avenues, not this architectural Frankenstein that's inconsistent with the avenues neighborhood. Ivory's application fails the most basic test. It's not an enhanced product, and it should be denied. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Gary Crittenden. State your name for the record, and you'll have 2 minutes.
Good evening. I am Gary Crittenden. In Ordinance 21A.62.040, the city defines compatible land use as the following: a use of land and/or buildings that, in terms of development intensity, building coverage, design, bulk and occupancy, traffic generation, and parking requirements, is consistent with and similar to neighboring uses. The purpose statement for the SR1 zone contains a similar provision. Ivory's proposed development does not meet this definition. An exhaustive analysis which was completed by residents of the avenues, which is in your briefing pack, where avenues residents have analyzed Ivory's proposed development and compared it to the nearest 10 blocks in the SR1 zone. Every factor of Ivory's design adds to bulk and building intensity. Occupancy, building size, the number of stories, the number of duplexes, the reduced spacing between buildings, lot coverage, and the reduced front and rear setbacks all add to excessive building intensity. Nowhere else in the avenues do you see an entire block of large, 90 feet long, two-story buildings closely packed together with 0 yard space. In terms of development intensity, and you'll see this in your packet, Ivory's proposed development is at least 2.5 to 3 times what is in the SR1 section in the avenues currently. By any objective analysis, Ivory's proposal does not meet the city's definition of compatible land use. It is not consistent with and similar to neighboring uses as is required by ordinance and must be denied. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Cindy Van Claveren. State your name for the record, and you'll have 2 minutes.
Good evening. I'm Cindy Van Claveren, North Point resident and retired educator. Ivory asks the Planning Commission for permission to construct a highly congested development with minimal green space, large houses, and no yards. Yard space is so important to families with young children. It's a safe place to play while under the watchful eye of a parent. The drainage basin on the corner of Capitol Park Avenue and F Street is no substitute for a yard. My own experience and input from realtors tells me that such houses with no yards will not attract families with young children and support school enrollment. Over the past decade, we have added thousands of units in the city aimed at singles and couples. We have done little in constructing small, more affordable homes with yard space that will provide for families with young children. Salt Lake School District has closed 4 schools recently, in part due to the lack of suitable, affordable family housing. Approval of Ivory's application for large houses with no yards would be a lost opportunity to create smaller, more affordable homes with yards for children. Construction of homes in accordance with SR1 zone regulations would yield smaller, more affordable homes with yard space. Homes that look like the avenues rather than a closely packed downtown development. Would Ivory make less money constructing smaller homes with yard space? Probably. but having already been granted a rezone that roughly doubles this number of lots, they'll do fine financially. We don't have to overbuild every small parcel in the city to satisfy greedy developers. Please, let's leave some space for our kids to play. Thank you.
Thank you. Janine Grigori. State your name for the record, and you'll have 2 minutes.
Good evening. I'm Janine Gregoire. I am not an architect, but even I can understand that 675 North F Street is a highly sloped foothill lot with a slope of almost 50 feet. Instead of building with the natural contours of the land, Ivory chooses to build 90-foot-long houses into the hillside. Ivory steps their buildings in an attempt to deal with the grade change. However, the stepping accounts for less than half of the slope. In order to meet height above established grade requirements, large wedges of soil will have to be removed from below each building. This massive amount of soil removal is clearly evident from the presence of an 8.5-foot high retaining wall running half the width of the property. Avenue's residents have repeatedly asked both Ivory and the Planning Division to quantify how many thousands of truckloads of soil will be removed from this lot to enable Ivory to build oversized houses against the natural topography. We have as yet to receive an answer to this question, so I will ask the Planning Commission, do you know how many thousands of truckloads of soil will be carted through our steep, narrow avenue streets to allow Ivory to overbuild this lot against the natural contour of the land? The very essence of a planned development is that it yields a better product than could otherwise be obtained. Ivory's proposal for a highly congested development not built in harmony with the land is not a better product and should be denied. Ivory needs to present a design that works with the natural topography, not against it, if they're to receive further concessions from the city. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next up is Don Warmbier. State your name for the record, and you'll have 2 minutes.
I'm Don Warmbier of North Point, which is in that part of the city at highest risk from wildfires. The F Street boundary of this project is North Point's only wildfire access and evacuation route. By narrowing F Street by 2 lanes from on-street parking, and by traffic congestion from a new intersection with F Street, this project will delay firefighter access and resident evacuation, making F Street defective as a wildfire access and evacuation route. Under state law, government immunity does not protect against lawsuits for injuries from defective streets. Salt Lake City and each of you personally as Planning Commission members would be exposed to lawsuits for injuries resulting from delays to which F Street's defective condition contributes. To protect Salt Lake City and yourselves, approval should be conditioned on the city's first prohibiting on-street parking on North Point's F Street wildfire access and escape route, and second, on Ivory's indemnifying the city and yourselves for any payments you have to make for wildfire injuries because of delays from F Street's defective condition as a wildfire access and evacuation route as a result of this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Lon Jenkins. State your name for the record, and you'll have 2 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Lon Jenkins. I am a resident of North Point. As enacted, the concept of ADUs, as residents have been assured by public officials, is that they will be added one at a time, here and there throughout the community by individual owner occupants, such that the increase in density is small and can be easily absorbed in a wide area. Ivory, as you've heard, is proposing something unprecedented here, a subdivision of ADUs where every home in this development will have an ADU. Ivory themselves have described this as an experiment and as the first of its kind in Utah. As you have heard, approval of a subdivision of 21 residences, each with an ADU, is nowhere near the same as approval of a single ADU. Concentrating ADUs in this manner effectively doubles the number of dwellings in a small area and brings into play numerous potential problems that do not exist for a single ADU. Those include, as you've heard tonight, grossly inadequate parking and a striking lack of green space. The densely packed vertical design of this project will forever change the character of the surrounding neighborhood. However, although Ivory has touted this development and has already obtained a rezone on the fiction that it is creating a subdivision of ADUs, in fact, as you know, Ivory cannot create even a single ADU. Only owner occupants can. The real experiment here is whether Ivory can successfully lure the Planning Commission into granting a planned development status for a project that is built on the fiction that Ivory is creating 21 ADUs. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next up, we have Jan McKinnon. I will. Yeah, we didn't receive any of those cards, so you're next. We will call for anyone else to speak after we go through the cards. State your name for the record, and you'll have 2 minutes.
Okay. I'm Jan McKinnon. I'm HOA President of the Meridian. May I share with you some of the comments we have heard since this all began. It all started when Mr. Chris Gambroulis told us one day, quote, "One day you'll wake up and hear bulldozers and there will be nothing you can do about it." He more recently said, "We don't want your opinions, we want you to tone down the rhetoric." Unquote. We have heard from city staff and others that, quote, "The planning division wants it, the mayor wants it, and Ivory Home wants it. It will get approved, period," unquote. In a meeting a few months ago with Planning Division Director Nick Norris, we asked if he thought the project excessive, and he replied, quote, "that it looked like a first ask from a developer rather than something that would be approved," unquote. We expected some pushback from the city to arrive at a reasonable outcome, and there has been none. What we have not heard and would very much like to hear is that opinions of hundreds and hundreds of Avenues residents matter. We have shared with you multiple code violations and misrepresentations by Ivory about preserving open space and creating ADUs and trails, and we have detailed problems such as inadequate parking and fire safety concerns. Ivory and the city have already gained additional density via the rezone. All we want, and what you asked for, is a reasonable SR1 development that looks like our neighborhood, a development with green space and yards. Is that too much to ask? Will we be heard? Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Ann Alba. And she may be in the other room, so we will come back to her and we will go to Judy. Okay. We will go to Judy Danker. State your name for the record, and you'll have 2 minutes.
Well, hello. My name is Judy Danker. I'm a retired Salt Lake City Police Department captain, and I am the third-generation owner of my home on 13th Avenue since 1916. In 1997, the LDS Church was granted a conditional use permit to build a chapel on the site now owned by and proposed for development by Ivory. A condition of the 97 Planning Commission approval was that 27 of the existing 53 trees on the site be preserved in their then existing locations. Only trees within the footprint of the chapel building and the parking area were to be removed, and then each removed tree replaced, quote, 2-to-1 by a 5 to 6 inch caliper tree, end quote. Contrast that environmental concern to Ivory's intent to remove all existing trees on the site as part of its 2024 development. Ivory refers to the trees preserved as part of the 97 plan approval as, quote, wild trees, end quote. Apparently, it has discovered a domestic tree species. Perhaps it also views the deer, fox, bobcat, ermine, quail, hawks, owls, and other wildlife that migrate through or make their homes on the site as needing domestication. We request the city honor its historic protection of the site, the purpose statements of its governing documents, and the public pronouncements of its officials before it approves a development plan that destroys this unique wildlife interface site by denuding its surface, obliterating its natural terrain, and ejecting its wild creatures from their ancestral homes. Thank you. Good evening.
Thank you. Next, we have Janie Mathis. State your name for the record, and you'll have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Janie Mathis. I live at 688 F Street, across the street from Ivory's requested planned development. We bought our lot in 2014, started construction in 2015 due to the numerous city regulations and permits. We were required to have completed house and landscape architectural plans prior to starting construction. We requested 2 extra feet of height, and we were denied. At a cost of $60,000 to remove 2 feet of dirt, is how we answered that. Ken Milo, a developer, took 8 feet from the south side of our lot without consequence. His project is, interestingly, 37 feet tall, and he is 678 F Street, right next door. So different rules for everybody. Ivory got their requested zoning change from FR3 to SR1A. We were denied a request for 2 feet on a lot of 0.42 acres. What merits Ivory's new requested planned development zoning? I heard 2 of them, and I disagree with that argument by Mr. Gambroulos. Why does Ivory get to pick and choose which parts of a planned development they find convenient and profitable and skirt what is not? If the east side of F Street is held to zoning mandates, why not Ivory on the west side? Why ignore the votes of over 2,200 Avenue's residents in favor of Ivory? Protect our neighborhood and value people over corporations. This project does nothing to solve Salt Lake City housing issues. It only adds to the net worth of Ivory, which in 2023 was around $490 million for their annual revenue. We are simply citizens who want to maintain the existing beauty and charm of our neighborhood. So thank you for listening. I appreciate you being here. And I'm just going to say, if I have 2 more seconds, this is all really personal to us. We live there. We built houses there. We have families there. This is our neighborhood. I bought there with zoning requirements. Everybody should be held to the same standards despite how much money they have, political power, and influence. So please do the right thing. Please.
Thank you. Next, we have Brooklyn Lindsay. State your name for the record, and you'll have 2 minutes.
My name is Brooklyn Lindsay. I'm a third-year law student at the U, and I was lucky enough to find a really affordable rental unit for $1,200, which is affordable nowadays, in the Avenue. So I've been renting there for the past 3 years. I love my neighborhood. It's diverse, it's eclectic, it's close to my school, my jobs, my church, my social activities, and I want to stay there after I graduate. I know that I probably will never be able to afford to buy a home there, at least for decades of work after working. But being able to rent one of these ADUs is kind of the next best thing for me if I want to stay in that neighborhood. And so that's why I'm in favor of this project. Outside of a very narrow demographic, home ownership in the Avenues is completely unrealistic without any innovation or creative housing projects, and that's what this is. I think the opposition tonight just shows that there's a lot of realities out there that we're facing that need to be addressed with innovation and with creativity. Salt Lake's growing. We need housing. We need all types of housing in every neighborhood. I keep hearing about how bad setbacks are and smaller lots are, but the data is out there. It has been for years that these modifications of land use law lead to lower home prices, even if those homes are still million-dollar homes. And when a bedroom or a one-bedroom apartment nowadays is going for almost $2,000, an ADU rental unit for $1,500 sounds good to me. So this Ivory Homes project does provide opportunity for diverse demographics in the Avenues, and I think that's something we should aim for. It can provide units for people to rent, people like me, and then also provides homes for sale for people who can't afford to live there. I think this is exactly the type of innovation and problem solving that the private sector needs to start demonstrating in order to deal with today's problems. And the private sector and public sector in partnership should be doing this. So,
thank you. Next up, we have Chris Nelson. State your name for the record, and you'll have 2 minutes.
I'm Chris Nelson. I am a presidential professor emeritus, University of Utah. I'm used to giving 2-hour lectures, not a 2-minute lecture, so I'll do my best. My expertise is in land use planning, public finance, demography, planning economics, and finance. I do the numbers. So when I look at Salt Lake City, I have calculated that the city itself, in terms of residential opportunities, is missing 2,500 households. In other words, there are 2,500 households that should be living here that aren't because they're doubling or tripling up with existing housing units. More importantly for this area, the Avenues, there are 1,500 fewer residents here in this area than there were in the year 2000, just about 20 years ago. To make up that missing population, we need to add 600 more housing units to the Avenues just to bring the population back to where it was in the year 2000. The city's new moderate income housing plan calls for 10,000 new residential units by the year 2027. That is more residential units than has ever been built in that period of time in the city's history. The city has put itself onto a very aggressive path. It's doing so because it needs to expand housing opportunities for moderate income households, housing opportunities for other people as well, and the Capitol Park project is the very kind of project the city needs to implement its various plans. More importantly, or as importantly, all facilities and services already exist, and so the Capitol Park does not have to incur any new burdens on the city taxpayers for services. Matter of fact, it will be a net positive fiscal generator for the city. It will also help keep the local schools open. Some schools are in danger of being closed. Projects like Capitol Park and others will add more students to the school system. In conclusion, this project is in accordance with the city's plans. Thank you.
Thank you. We have gone all through all of the cards. If anyone else would like to speak, go ahead and approach the microphone. State your name for the record, and you'll have 2 minutes.
My name is Bruce Johnson. I live in North Point. Good evening. I and many other residents have a huge concern with the lack of sufficient parking provided by Ivory. An analysis included in your packet that shows that at least 30 vehicles will regularly park on neighboring streets, inconveniencing and displacing current residents. This is not a walkable part of the city. The only realistic method of transportation is a personal car. With 21 primary residents and 21 ADUs and 2 cars per unit, Ivory's development will bring 84 vehicles. Those cars will take up all the space provided at the primary residences. That includes driveways and the garages. Even if tandem parking, which will also be required to squeeze that many cars, is widely accepted, a highly unlikely outcome, Ivory's plan includes only 4 guest parking places. There's no place to put snow, there's no place to put guests, and there's limited street parking. Ivory, with no street parking, and there is no street, this is grossly insufficient for a development with 42 units. Ivory has reduced lot widths well below SR1 standard. If lot widths were increased, there would be space for an extra car or 2. They have too many units. This would greatly alleviate any serious parking considerations. If Ivory is to add additional residents and ADUs, then it needs to adequately provide for them. It does not. This application should be denied, and Ivory asked to return with a plan that works and is self-sufficient. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. If anyone else would like to speak, go ahead and approach. State your name for the record, and you'll have 2 minutes.
My name is Kent Fairbanks. I'm a registered architect and have practiced for 45 years in 5 western states, including Utah. A well-designed building not only enhances its surroundings, but also has a positive impact on the well-being of its inhabitants and on the community where it is built. Although the code does not specifically require beautiful and functional buildings, it does require that new projects, quote, maintain the unique character of older, predominantly single-family and 2-family dwelling neighborhoods, unquote. As building creators, we should be charged with making buildings that are not only uplifting and functional, but also visually appealing. The Ivory Project site plan looks like an open can of sardines. Behind cottage facades are 90-foot-long 2-story uphill structures with minimal side yards and a narrow 20-foot alley serving 42 residences with up to 80 cars parked 3 deep in some areas. The confines of this 20-foot wide alley will be a nightmare for residents and difficult for emergency vehicles. I acknowledge that there are many opinions on the aesthetics of architecture. However, in my opinion, the Ivory project deserves a grade of D for lack of livability, aesthetics, and safety of this project and its negative impact on the surrounding community. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? If there happens to be anyone in the overflow, now's your opportunity. If you'd like to speak, go ahead. State your name for the record, and you'll have 2 minutes.
Hello, my name is Gifford Metz, and I live in South Salt Lake, which is not usually considered to be part of the community near the avenues, but I rent in South Salt Lake, and I consider the rental market for the city to be pretty much citywide, as in prices and supply and demand in one part of the city affects those in the other. So I feel like I have a stake in this, whether or not more housing gets built. And I'm in favor of more housing. I know there are a lot of concerns about parking and neighborhood character, but often people moving into these ADUs are going to be young people like me who we can often double up on cars or, have some people use transit some of the time. I myself personally lived without a car in and around the Salt Lake County area for 2 years. It's doable for people to move in and actually live without cars. So you can't really assume that there's going to be a one-to-one correspondence between new residents and each resident having a car causing all the parking problems that you're worried about having. And it's just really important to tackle the housing crisis, which it's not just here, it's in the rest of Utah and it's nationwide. Rents are going up, cost of living is going up, and getting a handle on that requires more housing being built, even if it's not, the most ideal according to neighborhood character or considerations such as that.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else? Any emails that have come in?
Yeah, we have a couple. The first one is from Turner Bitten. He says, hello, I'm writing on behalf of SLC Neighbors for More Neighbors.
Can you get a little closer to the mic?
Yes,
Thanks.
I can. To support the plan development and subdivision plat proposals before you, we previously supported the requested rezoning for this petition, and submitted plans should result in the approval of the proposal. We believe there are 3 main benefits of this project for the Planning Commission to consider. First, housing diversity. The project provides both main single-family units and accessory dwelling units. This will increase housing diversity in a highly desirable area of the city and is completely in line with the neighborhood's existing character. Second, increased density, including ADUs increases the housing density, thus creating more housing than would otherwise be achieved with single-family homes only. And third, infill development. As mentioned in the staff report, the proposal accomplishes much needed infill development in an underutilized space. This will contribute to the city's stated goal of creating 10,000 housing units throughout the city. Thank you for considering this project. We encourage the Planning Commission to approve the requests before you. Thanks. The second one is from Lisa Lariva. I live at 790 North Point Drive, diagonally across from the Ivory Homes property. Ivory's already received a new zoning, SR1. The Ivory plan exceeds the granted zoning. They plan more dwellings than allowed in SR1. The Ivory plan houses are twice the size of the community and have only minimal distances between the building. The scale is not typical as Ivory indicates. I oppose this development. The pictures shown by Ivory of homes that are not near. They are far down the hill from the 13th Avenue location of the Ivory lot. So thank you. I continue to oppose the Ivory plan. That's all.
Thank you. I'm going to once again ask if there's anybody who would like to give public comment. Seeing no one, we'll go ahead and close and bring it back to the commission for discussion and a motion.
Can I ask, Irvin, to see the
the picture you had that just shows the footprints of the houses in that neighborhood?
Sure.
Just the black and white? What's it called? Figure ground, building forms. I have a question maybe for staff. One of the contentions in the plan development standards is that the fact that these buildings are planned with ADUs built into them would provide a housing type, which would be studio or one-bedroom units for rent that are not generally available in this. Do you know, or do you have any studies about how many one-bedroom or studio units are available in this area?
I don't have that information. I apologize.
Okay, that's okay. Is your contention that those types of housing don't exist in this neighborhood? Is that anecdotal, or is it, where does that contention come from?
Based on the predominant land use and building type, yes, it's a rare use. I apologize. Based on the predominant building type and land use within the neighborhood, I'd say yes, that is a rare land use type within the neighborhood, the single art studio.
Okay. Can you say that most of the structures in this neighborhood, in this area, are single-family residential? Is that true?
Because of the age of the neighborhood, there are likely a lot of duplexes, maybe multiple units within these houses. That's not information I have, but that's very common in the avenues, more common in the lower half of the avenues in the historic district, less common north of 6th Avenue, but still happens.
And then I have another question. Is it true, I think, that I know, that any residence in the city, if you're zoned for residential, you could rent part of your house, whether it's constructed as an ADU, whether it meets all of the requirements for ADU for like fire separation, whether it has a kitchen or not, but you can rent a part of your home to someone, like up to 3 unrelated adults could rent a part of any residential home. Is that true?
So are you talking like a separate unit in the house?
No,
or
I'm just saying like anybody who owns a home could rent part of their home to someone.
Yes. The definition of family is up to 3 unrelated individuals within a house. So in a roommate situation, you could have up to 3 individuals living within a dwelling unit. That would be allowed by the zoning regulations. Yes.
Up to 3 unrelated adults, but like 7 if it was parents and children or something like that.
Yes.
Okay. And that doesn't, if you do that, if you rent a unit, that doesn't require you to get additional parking or anything else like that, or does it?
When you say unit, you again are talking like a room?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, there's no additional parking requirement. It would still be a single family use in that case. As long as there are no more than 3 unrelated adults in the building, the single family house.
But an ADU has a specific definition of like a separate entrance, a separate kitchen and bathroom, lockable, like fire separation, utility separation. Okay, so thanks. That's my question for now.
Mr. Chair, can I have a request that the applicant respond now before we start getting into stuff, so they might cover things that we don't have to be redundant.
Yes, go ahead.
So, I'm not sure how to respond. There's a lot of comments about the shape of buildings, and I'll try to speak louder. The site plan that we had submitted previously that had 19 units on it, one of the real objections to that was the number of retaining walls and how large they were. And it was because it was done in a more traditional design, which is what required that. We had to have 5 and 6 and 8 foot retaining walls between lots to create private yards. So when we went to Eric and his team, we said we want to minimize the retaining walls and create and design the site, design the housing with the site, so we can do that. So I think the main point, maybe Eric can opine on that a little bit more, but if the conversation is something ought to be built here that is respectful of the site, that's what this is. These units were specifically designed to minimize retaining walls so that we could take up grade within the house.
That's correct, and we used the section to take advantage of that, so we were taking up a story as we moved up the hill. I also wanted to mention, there's been a number of comments about the depth of the homes. All of these homes are actually very similarly scaled to a lot of the homes in the neighborhood, but we added and attached the garage to fit within the site. So sometimes when you add garages, the footprint tends to get a little bit deeper than a number of the homes that were built before garages. Also, the other thing you see a lot in the avenues is you see a lot of homes that are broadside to the street, which creates a very low density environment in order to get the density that this site can take and the opportunity to create a neighborhood that fits in with the patterns of the site and with the neighborhoods around it. We took on the very typical housing types that you see in the avenues in the Capitol Hill neighborhood as well.
So in terms of the clustering and the open space, the redesign of this and the reason that it doesn't fit the box of the SR1 zone is so that we could minimize the retaining wall. So we didn't have lots that were square. And that is what created this 1 acre open space. In the previous plan, there was a small amount of open space, about 13,000 square feet, that was shown in the previous plan. By the way, the previous plan was never voted on. It was not voted on by the Planning Commission, was not approved by the City Council. It was a site plan that was done early on and abandoned 18 months before it ever came here. But to say that is, open space, but a trail is not. Open space is a lot of different things. So I would take exception to that. If you have specific questions, it's hard to respond to, mostly just opinions.
I have some questions. Aaron, can you kind of go over for us I think there's some confusion about the process of subdividing and why we need to do that for this application?
So we say the process of subdividing, creating the individual lots for the houses?
Yeah, so I think the confusion that I discerned from some of the comments was this perception that we had to subdivide for individual ADUs, but that's not what we're doing.
No, the ADUs, and actually for single-family houses, state law requires that we approve internal ADUs. So those are outside of even our purview. But yes, it's not a subdivision of ADUs. Right. It is creating 21 units with an ADU, which in the code specifically says is not a unit of density.
Yes, I know that. I also wanted you to kind of, maybe I think you already addressed that. Those are like my questions for now that I wanted to clarify for some of the comments, and then as we get to a discussion, I'll have more.
One clarification on that same thread. These are not ADUs, correct, that are being built in. They are just space within the structure which a purchaser could opt to have permitted and construct an ADU. They're not going to be done by Ivory Homes. They're not going to be automatically installed. That's correct?
No, the intent is to do them up front. And just to be an ADU, separate entrance, separate bathroom facilities, right? Not separate utilities necessarily, but under House Bill 84, our House Bill 82 from 4 years ago, there was definitions put into state law about how to do that. But it's true. Someone might come in and say, yeah, I love that view. I'm going to make it an office, but there'll be a bathroom there. And in the future, that was my point earlier, in the life cycle of the home, it can flex in and out. It might be a rental one day, even if it isn't on the first day.
Aaron, another quick question, well, hopefully, two quick questions. Do you have, or can we pull up the definition of open space and the definition of trails from the ordinance?
If you give me a minute, yes,
Yeah,
I can get
it's
those.
fine to take a minute. Just if someone can do that, that would be great to hear.
The public hearing has been closed.
Okay, so I'll talk about one other thing that just came to mind as I was reviewing this very well done staff report, and I want to thank you. I mean, the considerable time it took to do it, the engagement and collection of all the comments from the public, all of that is clear from the report itself. And I guess all of you probably have looked it up, but it's nearly 500 pages, and marshaling that together is no easy task. It seems very important, based on the condition of the approval of the rezone, that the trail and open space be accessible by the public. In my experience, where these areas are created as common areas on a plat and dedicated on a plat and then regulated through a declaration by an HOA, there's not any security that that is going to last long term without some kind of perpetual covenant within the declaration itself or easement with the city. So in my mind, I feel like to really secure that interest that the city council has been very clear about, that there needs to be a requirement either to enter into an easement. Obviously, it's not going to be a dedication to the public because the city's not accepting that as public land, but an easement with the city for the use of the public, or something within the declaration itself that will give some heftier restrictions so that the HOA itself can't take a vote and decide to keep the public from using those areas.
So the development agreement does include that, but you're welcome to expand that and
Oh,
require
great.
it for the final plat. Or
Well, yes, the development agreement, that's recorded, correct?
yeah, it's recorded on the
Yeah.
property.
I just don't think that's strong enough language yet. I think there needs to be something that is going to really prohibit owners of those homes from coming together and voting to terminate public's access. So I think maybe looking at that is helpful. Of course, yeah.
So, yeah, it's in the development agreement exactly from the motion from the city council, and so that's why it says what it says. There's two sides of this. One is it says generally accessible to the public.
Right.
It doesn't say top lot, right? And the other thing is when the council was deliberating this, we had these conversations about liability.
Yeah.
And that's important too. So it's going to be important for the future owners here to be able to limit their liability while still generally accessible or generally usable by the public. I don't say accessible because that sounds like ADA talk, but it's not. It's just that they can generally use the trail, but not accepting liability if someone were to slip and fall or something.
Yeah, I think that's part of what the problem is for me, is there's gonna have to be someone with liability. And if it
Yeah.
if it's maintained in private ownership by the HOA, and you're still required to have whatever this term means, generally accessible. I mean, I think it would be in both parties' interest to negotiate a formal easement agreement or license agreement of some sort, because there has to be a liability question answered there, right?
Or a plat note.
Yeah,
Would be
something,
It would
yeah.
it would probably
Of
be
record.
more appropriate on the plat, recorded as a plat note.
Yeah,
We're
just
happy
something
to-
that's more definite.
We're happy to have that conversation with you.
Well, I mean, I don't know that ultimately it would be a conversation with me. I think my
meant
suggestion
you,
is I think my suggestion is that we consider making that a condition of approval, that question be answered in terms of what the nature actually of the access is and what's going to happen to memorialize liability and perpetual access, or not perpetual access, or to better define this general accessibility. I think that is a piece that's just too general.
I have pulled up those definitions.
Thank you.
Would you like me to read open space?
Yes.
And there's also a definition for open space area. So
Okay.
I'll start with open space.
Great, thank you.
An area of land or water that is improved or unimproved and serves the purposes of preservation of natural resources, recreation, or public health and safety. Open space is land set aside for conservation or recreation purposes. It may include woodlands, play areas, recreation centers, government facilities, walking and riding trails, nature center, wetlands, and lands in the floodplains, as well as lands used for passive or active recreation.
Thank you.
Open space area is any area of a lot which is completely free of and unobstructed from any structure or parking areas. Landscaping, walkways, uncovered patio areas, light poles, and other ornamental features shall not be considered as obstructions for purposes of this definition. Driveways that provide access to parking lots shall not be considered as an obstruction subject to the driveways not exceeding 20% of any required yard area they provide access through.
Thank you. And trails, did you have trails as well?
It is not in in our ordinance, so I'll pull up Merriam-Webster just a minute.
Okay, I searched for one. I mean, I'm not trying to do a bait and switch. I just thought if you can pull it up. And I don't know that it's applicable, so maybe ask Ms. Pasker, but you do have a definition. The city does have a definition of trails in the Lands, Trails, and Urban Forestry Advisory Board. So it's 22.94.030.
So that wouldn't apply to
That's what I thought. I
the
was
zoning
afraid
code.
it wouldn't. Okay, so no zoning definition of trails.
That's right.
Okay.
I have one kind of clarifying question on the ADUs. You mentioned something like 5% of owners wanting them. You're trying to get more. Are these homes built as is and then sold, or are you bringing an owner in and they're making changes beforehand and saying, no, we don't want the ADU?
They'll be both. We will pre-build some and have a demonstration so people can see how it lives and how it works. But there will be people who will customize them. The concept in the previous plan, there were very intentional casita plans and over garage, we called them the Fonzie units. And so they were built intentionally like that. This is a new design. And that's part of the conflation, is that there's this vision of the previous plan and this one, and they're just entirely different.
Okay. I think the reason I ask is just because, for me, the kind of innovation and benefit of this place and the density and the rationale for doing it is the ADUs. And so I worry if it's a situation where, I mean, until you put the door and entrance on, it's just a room, right? And if they don't do that and just have it another bedroom from inside, then it's just a house. So I know that we're mandating that the one on lot 21 has an ADU. I don't know if that's possible to say that these are all built at least with an outdoor entrance or something like that.
We work with a lot of production home builders. Ivory's one of them, and Chris can add to this if he'd like. One of the things we have seen is that the incremental cost of creating ADU creates a significantly more valuable home afterwards. So in many cases, it's a pretty much, we have not seen many times when you have something like this purpose-built with an ADU, that an owner would not take advantage of that because of the value change and the opportunities that would go with it.
I would like to speak for just a second to the two standards the two plan development standards, which is what my understanding is that that's what lets you cut back the setbacks and put buildings on not public roads, which so the plan development standards the first one is that it provides open space, but I would like to see that the value of the open space and whatever that means, like the amount of it, the usefulness of it, something like that, I would like to see that increased a lot in order for it to actually qualify for a planned development concession, because I'm not sure that it does meet that standard right now. That's my reading of it. The other thing is that to say that it meets the standards of a planned development because it offers a type of housing that's not available in this neighborhood. I don't know that we have the information to verify that right now. To say that there aren't rental units already available in this neighborhood, I think we just don't know. So in my thought, maybe the standards aren't proven to the point where they could be. If we had more information, if we had information about what kind of housing units are available in this neighborhood, or if we saw a value of open space that's preserved in order to qualify it, to meet the standard for planned development, I would like to see that outlined better, and maybe not shown better, maybe improved as well. That's what I think about those two standards. So I would, in that case, I would be in favor of tabling it until those items are addressed or improved.
These are a lot of modifications, and we've had this discussion on the commission before. It makes it almost unrecognizable from what was intended. And I just have a real difficult time with that. We've said before that if we do it for one, we have to do it for everybody. And then you start to wonder, why do we have standards to begin with? So that's my only comment.
On the other hand, urban planning studies with Jan Gale say that setbacks often ought not to be more than 10 feet, in that it often creates more chances for human-to-human connection, and so the standards as I am seeing it are fulfilling some of what I see as valuable standards. So the changes to the setbacks for me are not as big of a deal as they are for some people in this room. So I don't know. That's my 2 cents on that comment.
So I'm going to pipe into our discussion. I think one of the things with the plan development standards, we get a lot of applications that request modifications to setbacks. Like nearly every one of them does. And one of the things that I always look at is the importance of the setbacks. Somewhat is uniformity within wherever they're infilling or where they're developing, but here we have its own lot, so there's going to be uniformity with whatever their proposal is. But the other more important thing to me for setbacks is that buffer to adjacent houses, and the setbacks, I think, become more important in those instances that we're providing existing homes or existing livable areas, whether it's a home or apartment or whatnot, that there is sufficient buffer between them. And because of the nature of this parcel, they already are getting that, and I don't feel like the reduction in setbacks for this one is excessive. And I remember I think I was one that made the comments of don't come back with a lot of requests, right? And I appreciated my memory being jogged for that, because I know that was me. And one of the things that I was really Okay. One of the things I was really concerned about was that you were going to come back and want a lot more height. That would not be consistent with the surrounding areas. And you didn't do that, so I feel like if I evaluate your request for modification of setbacks, especially in relationship to other applications I've seen over the 5 years I've been on this commission, I don't feel that they're necessarily excessive, and I do think within this proposal, they don't create opportunities for conflict in the way that I normally view setbacks. I also think one of the things for open space in regarding to the standard, one of the things that I've become increasingly uncomfortable with is applications that request to move their open space requirement into an area that is not public, right? So they want them on rooftop decks, or they want to completely privatize the open space requirement. And we're not seeing that here. Whether or not people want to walk around the trail is, people can do it or they won't do it. But to have it in a place that is at least generally accessible, to me is what the trend has been moving away from that. So that is when I evaluate, like, are we having open space? Is it in an area that is somewhat beneficial to the public? Whether the public decides to use it is not up to us. So I feel like, and then in housing types, we've neglected to mention that we do have condo units not too far from here. So we have different densities throughout the avenues, but even in this area. So when we're looking at compatibility of housing, it's not so much, is this a rental, is this owner occupied, it is what types of housing. And we certainly see, and I don't know, maybe I know a different avenues than other people, but I certainly know an avenues that is densely populated with houses that are extremely close to each other with very little yards. And I've also come to realize that for some people, that's a drawback. For other people, they don't mind it. So having different housing types is certainly prevalent here in the avenues, whether it's single family homes, some duplexes, and dense condo apartment units throughout this area. So I feel like these housing types do meet that, in that it's offering a variety of them. You know, and ADUs are allowed on single family residences, so if they're not built when this is constructed, a homeowner could decide they want to add it in later, and they are perfectly within their property rights to do that. ADUs, if they are rented, only mean that the homeowner must live in one of those units. The homeowner has to either live in the primary home or the ADU in order to rent it out as an ADU. So the homeowner, it's the homeowner's choice. So I think it's great you're building it with it, because it could be built otherwise. The homeowner can opt to use it as an office, can opt to use it when, you know, family comes in town to go skiing for the winter. They could use it for that. If they want to use it as a rental, that's their right to do it under city ordinance, and they have to live in one of those units. So I don't see their inclusion as problematic, but I do see it as offering then another multitude of housing types for different people. And I think one comment tonight that really struck with me was that we do have a lot of realities. There's a lot of different realities for different people, and we need different solutions for those different realities. And I think that this is a fairly good one. We shouldn't also forget that this lot is really close to City Creek, and there's a park, Reed's Park, just like around the corner. So there is some open space very close by. But if a family values large yards, they have opportunities to find one in a different location. If a family values more of a home, they might like this. Not everybody likes the same thing. And beauty is in the eye of the beholder. I have most certainly learned that over my 5 years. There are things that come before here that I just think are atrocious. And then people will say, I love this. This is wonderful. This is elegant. And And I may like this or I may not, but somebody does in terms of its look. And we don't really regulate aesthetics here at the Planning Commission. That's not our purview. And then the final one I want to address in relationship to the ordinance is the concern about parking. So even with the opportunity, if they construct 21 ADUs and they are all actually rented out with 82 parking stalls, this project meets city code, and we as a planning commission cannot require any applicant to provide more parking than the code requires. If people feel the code is inadequate, that code is set by the city council and then city staff and the planning commission. We don't get the opportunity or the purview or the luxury to decide if it's inadequate. We have to go by the code. So even if this was fully built out and all the ADUs are rented, those 82 parking stalls do meet city code. So at this point, I feel like it has met the planned development standards and it's meeting the subdivision standards, and I feel comfortable with where this is at. And I appreciate that, I guess, and this is another relative term, is that I appreciate that I don't think you came back with excessive requests, even though other people may think you did. That is also reasonable. People can see that differently. But I remember I was very concerned with the the opportunity you may come back requesting taller, a lot taller. And I'm pleased that you've kept that in a reasonable height relationship to how the Avenues has developed. At some point, you know, all of these houses modified the habitat that was originally here. So, and displaced people and wildlife and all that. So the fact that, you know, you've tried to be sensitive to the overall patterns of how those go, I actually feel that that is a well done job in that regard, personally. So those are my thoughts for discussion.
And Mr. Chair, I just want to say, as a person who studies site planning, who does a lot of site planning professionally, I know it may not seem that way to many people here. It doesn't, obviously, because they're talking about can of sardines and so forth. This is a better site plan than the previous thing that we were looking at. And it does actually take advantage of the slope by putting it into the internal part of the unit rather than having big retaining walls. So I think that whatever objections you may have to this, it is a better, objectively better site plan than would have been had they followed the SR1 completely, which is why I would be in favor of it.
Just a reminder to the commission that this application requires two motions, one for the plan development and another for the preliminary subdivision plat.
Also, I want to say also to people who think that this is very, very dense, if you look at the figure ground document, you have the footprint document here, you will see that all of the avenues is pretty dense. If you showed this to somebody who lived in West Jordan, they would say you guys were packed in like sardines. So it is kind of a matter of perspective on that kind of idea. This is a more urban lot. It's very close to downtown. So being a dense project is expected, actually. And I think you will find once it's built out that it will be a pleasant looking project too. So, thank you. I can make a motion if I can find it. Hold on. I've got to get out of this whole program. All right. This is a motion for the plan development, PLN PCM 2021-00656. Based on the information presented and the discussion, I move that the commission approve this plan development application as recommended by staff with the conditions listed in the staff report.
I'll second that.
We have a motion by Commissioner Scheer and a second by Commissioner Berry. Any discussion to the motion?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just raise this idea of nailing down what the public access means and where the liability is going to lie for that. And I don't know, I'll defer to Ms. Pasker and Mr. Norris about whether that condition is more appropriate on the plan development piece or on the subdivision piece. If the commission is inclined to include that type of condition, I would suggest that be included as part of the subdivision process and to leave that open to staff's discretion about how to reflect that intent in terms of, you know, the exact form or exact document, whether it's on the plat or some other document. Perfect. Thank you for that clarification.
I agree with that, and I would love to apply that to the decision. So would we need another motion then?
We will handle that in the second motion. Right now, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any other discussion to the motion?
Clarify me real quick, are we doing the plan development
Yes,
motion
this
right
is
now?
the plan development motion.
Can I offer a substitute motion to table this item until the type of housing available in this neighborhood is documented for us and the value of the open space is clarified or increased? That's my motion, to table it until those things are met.
Do we have a second for that motion? I don't see a second, so we will return to the original motion and we will go ahead and vote. Commissioner Kratzik,
Yes.
Commissioner Burrows,
Yes.
Commissioner Berry,
Yes.
Commissioner Gale,
Yes.
Commissioner Tuttle,
No.
Commissioner Scott,
Yes.
Commissioner Scheer,
Yes.
and the chair will also vote yes. That passes 7-1.
I'm prepared to make a motion. On the preliminary subdivision plat, PLN SUB 2021-01175, based on the information presented and the discussion, I move the commission approve this preliminary subdivision plat coinciding with staff's recommendations, but with the following modification, that the city and Ivory Homes enter into an agreement delineating the scope and purposes of the public use of the walkway and open space, as well as delineating maintenance responsibilities and liability related to the same.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Gale and a second by Commissioner Scheer. Any discussion to the motion? We'll go ahead.
I think I need to add one thing that I forgot, that the final form of where that agreement appears and the final form of the agreement is left to staff's discretion.
That's a friendly.
Okay. We will go ahead and take a vote. Commissioner Gale,
Yes.
Commissioner Berry,
Yes.
Commissioner Burrows,
Yes.
Commissioner Kratzik,
Yes.
Commissioner Scheer,
Yes.
Commissioner Scott,
Yes.
Commissioner Tuttle,
No.
and the chair will also vote yes. That passes 7-1. We will take a 10-minute break. We will reconvene at 8:18. Okay, our next item is the Chicago rooftop patio plan development at approximately 27 to 45 North Chicago Street. Case number PLN PCM 2023-00791. And our planner is Michael McNamee.
Hello. All right. So this is a plan development request for a new multifamily residential building called the Chicago at approximately 27 to 45 North Chicago Street. The property is situated on Chicago Street between North and South Temple in the Poplar Grove neighborhood. Madsen Park is located directly to the south. The applicant is requesting an additional 5 feet of building height to add a rooftop patio to the top of the proposed building. Otherwise, the building meets the standards of the TSA UNT zone, which it is in. The project is on a property that is slightly larger than 1/2 acre in size and will include 120 studio 1 and 2 bedroom units. It will also include 40 parking stalls and a garage located on the first level. Total height of the building will be 65 feet, including parapet walls. This slide shows the first level of the building. 91% of the street-facing spaces on the ground floor will be lobby and amenity spaces, which exceeds the 80% requirement in TSA. Parking will be located to the rear with 2 drive access points from Chicago Street on either end of the building. Total building length will be approximately 191 feet. The subject property is currently divided into 5 parcels, which are home to 4 single-family residential units. These structures will be demolished in order to build the proposed project. The surrounding block is mostly characterized by single-family homes as well, although construction is underway across the street on a new townhome project. The entire block is zoned TSA UNT, so the development potential of the rest of the block is similar to the subject property. In reviewing this project, it was reviewed against general zoning standards, the zoning standards for the TSA districts, and the standards for plan developments. Diving into the proposed request, the applicant is proposing an additional 5 feet of building height to accommodate a rooftop patio. In TSA districts, projects are reviewed against a scoring rubric, and if they achieve a high enough development score, they are eligible for an additional floor of building height. In the TSA UNT zone, a maximum height of 50 feet is allowed, and a total height, in this case, of up to 60 feet was allowed with a high enough development score because the average height of the first 5 levels was 10 feet. The way the TSA code language is worded, the additional height is limited to 1 habitable story, and the applicant is already taking advantage of that to add the 6th level to the building. And since the rooftop patio is also habitable space, and on a separate level from the 6th floor, it cannot be granted through the TSA additional height allowance, so it needs to be approved through a plan development. In the TSA zones, up to 5 feet in additional building height can be requested through the plan development process. The overall height of the building will be 65 feet, and that includes parapet walls. In the TSA UNT zone, parapet walls can already exceed the allowable height by 5 feet, so the massing of the building will not be impacted by the plan development if it is granted. The surrounding property, except for Madsen Park, is all in the same zoning district, so similar building heights are achievable for neighboring properties. The proposed rooftop patio will be about 7,300 square feet in size and be situated on the southern portion of the roof, overlooking Madsen Park and Chicago Street. It will include seating and recreational areas. All permanent structures will fit within the 65-foot building height envelope. The rooftop patio should help with the eyes on the street effect of the building, increasing surveillance of Chicago Street and Madsen Park, and making them safer places to be. Overall, inclusion of the rooftop patio creates a better product than a literal interpretation of the zoning ordinance, which would disallow the patio. The project generally supports the implementation of Plan Salt Lake and the North Temple Boulevard Plan. The North Temple Boulevard Plan includes a goal of introducing new development near Madsen Park that increases the use and surveillance of the park, which this project would do. Plan Salt Lake goals about redeveloping underutilized land, building high-density residential buildings near transit stations, and encouraging more efficient use of city infrastructure will all be supported by the project. To solicit input on the project, notice was sent to property owners and residents within 300 feet of the project site, as well as the Fair Park and Poplar Grove Community Councils in October 2023. The community councils did not provide letters regarding the project, but staff did receive 2 emails and 1 phone call from the public. All 3 comments were in opposition to the project overall. Staff was able to explain that the Planning Commission only has the authority to make a decision about the extra building height that's being requested by the applicant and not the development of the property overall, but also wanted to reiterate that here. So in regard to the proposed request for the additional building height, staff recommends that the Planning Commission give it approval. And that concludes my presentation. Happy to take questions after the applicant is able to present.
Thank you. Let's have the applicant go ahead and come up. And state your name for the record.
I'm Derek Christensen. I'm with Design West Architects. We represent the owner for the project. I guess before I really get started, I really should just thank everybody here for your time. You give up time from your families. We really appreciate this ability, so thank you. So as Michael had identified, our intent here is to activate that rooftop and create an additional occupiable space in order to create some, well, I'll put it this way. Our defined goal as architects is to promote the health, the safety, and the welfare of occupants within our buildings and our structures. And as such, that's what our interest in doing this rooftop is specifically. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about improving the open space, some vegetated roofs, and some property values. So specifically, you've already seen this image. This is our proposed structure there with just very minor modifications as we've been working through the planning process. As we look at this kind of a structure and we look at how we can improve it, we look at quality living spaces. We look at designing apartments that are more than just small boxes. Much of the development world lately has been, how many units can I put in a specific square? And on a structure like this, most developers could probably put 200 units or greater. And that was definitely not our intent. Our intent was to create quality units, quality spaces, and a quality living environment. Incorporating exercise, active lifestyle. We've got this wonderful park adjacent to the space, and intentionally designing a rooftop space that creates a sport activity, horticulture elements, and a location where they can come together as a community. A few notes, we do understand that the single family homes in this area are in a little bit of disrepair. I don't know that I can specifically identify that is to any specific reason, though there is an inadequacy of lighting down this corridor. And there is also some concern of that natural surveillance of the park. I think we noted in news reports back in 2021 that the park did close due to rampant crime. We'd love to see that park flourish. Many of our employees live within this area. I consider myself to live within this area as I work blocks away from the site. It is my home. And so the intent, the additional intent with our rooftop community is to create that sightline, create that ability to connect with the park, connect with the environment there around. There are some benefits that come along with vegetated roofs, and these benefits are to our advantage and also to the city and to our community at large. We know that rooftops that implement green roofs have a lower temperature. They perform better as a building. The more we can promote this kind of element, the more we can reduce heat island within the community at large, which, according to the EPA, can take a city's temperature down by 5 degrees. We can improve air quality. I really won't go much through those details. And we can also improve stormwater management by collecting it and managing through our roof. Here are some examples, both one that you're all familiar with of a rooftop here in downtown Salt Lake. I don't think that it's of any question that they do beautify the city. They provide a benefit to our skyline, and they activate things that would otherwise just be completely unused. This was a quick snap of Google Map in the area as it was taken a number of months back, and you can see developments throughout the area. I'm involved in several of these. Specifically there, kind of the north center is definitely a development that is underway. This is an artistic rendering of just changing that skyline, right? I'm gonna go kind of back and forth on it a little bit. But we can certainly beautify our city by promoting this and pushing this through. Lastly, we did do a little bit of research, and we wanted to make sure that we were addressing housing costs. Of course, the apartment by right is allowed there in the area, but we wanted to make sure that the community at large knows that there have been studies done. The Gardner Institute and the University of Utah recently did a study just a few years back that identified that single-family home value in Salt Lake City within less than a half-mile of apartments did have an average higher median value per square foot than those that were not within that distance. And then those that were just slightly greater than that half-mile also had a greater value per square foot. So apartments don't necessarily decrease the value of homes. They do provide an additional element. We just heard earlier from the Ivy Group that was putting together single-family homes. These all mesh together as a solution for housing within the state. And then lastly, new construction makes homes more affordable. They create that rippling effect through vacancy. And I guess I had one more. As we kind of close, our presentation here, we realize that the city has been pushing for this. This has been a concept that both planning and the councils and commissions have been working towards. Not too long ago, when you created the transit station area guidelines, there was a section 16 added that specifically encouraged this kind of skyline variety. And as an architecture group working with many developers, what we would see in this is, how do we help you guys implement this? How do we make this a reality in the city and beautify and do better? There's never an excuse to do something better than code. So we appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from the commission? Seeing none, let's go ahead and open up the public hearing. Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak on this item? I don't see anyone. Have we received any emails in the meantime?
No.
We'll go ahead and close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission for discussion and a motion.
I'll make a motion.
I have a quick question. So on this 5 feet, do you have a rendering of then what that will end up looking like? Because I guess I'm questioning if you're adding 5 foot wall, that you're really getting eyes on the park. Like, I mean, I couldn't see over that. I'm barely over 5 feet myself. So, how is that actually achieving that goal?
So the truth of the matter is that with the TSA guidelines, we're able to get that extra floor. The city code allows us parapet walls at 5 feet. In the interim of those two elements, we're actually not really requesting an additional 5 feet. The reason for the 5 feet, I believe from planning perspective, is that without it, we can't have a structure. We can't put a planter up there because it wouldn't be allowed specifically by code. So the request for 5 feet is of course very apt, but we don't intend to build walls in addition to that.
So, Michael, then can you further explain that then?
So I think it was mostly me that was making the argument that it does improve that eyes on the street relationship anyway. And so I think I agree that there probably will be at least a portion of the park and the street that you won't be able to see from the building because it'll just be too close. But I think there will be parts of the park that you would be able to see.
So
And
do city ordinance really not allow any kind of activity on a roof that unless you have a special exception?
this is, no. So in this particular case, because it's in a TSA zone and you can get that extra height for getting a high enough TSA score.
Yeah.
The way that that language is worded that gives you the extra height, it limits you to one habitable floor, one habitable level, which is the 6th level in this case.
So you consider a rooftop deck garden area habitable, a livable area?
We don't consider it a livable area, but it is habitable space that is on a different level, that is above the additional level that
So
they're
that
already.
becomes then part of the what's allowed under that TSA part.
Yes, because it's above.
So the reason he has to come for this is because it's considered livable. Do we have a definition in ordinance of rooftop, like what?
Can I
Yeah.
weigh in?
I'm trying to like narrow
So-
down like what we're allowing and why we have to do this.
So we have a height obstructions table in our code that allows certain things to exceed the maximum height of the zone. So this building is at the maximum height, and the parapet wall is an allowed height exception for the purpose of screening mechanical equipment. That's it. So there's not any sort of exception. If they didn't have mechanical equipment up on the roof, they couldn't do the parapet wall.
So the code specifically states to screen mechanical equipment.
And for no other purpose. So that's where there's the issue with rooftop use, particularly in these zones where people typically or frequently build to the maximum building height.
So do we have an ordinance then additionally that doesn't allow for rooftop decks and planters?
No, if it can fit within the allowed height, like the railing and all the things necessary for that accessory use to occur, then it's allowed. If they don't have that ability to add those types of things like the required railing and everything else.
So they're only allowed a parapet wall if they had mechanical equipment to screen.
That's right.
Are you screening mechanical equipment as well?
Of course.
All right. So then in addition to that, so they're going to have that regardless. It's just now like, can we let them have a planter and a bench or
It's
something?
one of the realities of a very specific section of
Okay,
code.
that's very helpful. Thank you.
And we will be back in a few months with another one.
Here's a question to staff, can we just fix that?
The code?
Yeah.
Sure.
List of things to fix.
Put it on the list.
Yeah, I mean, the planning commission has the authority to initiate changes to the code.
Let's do that.
Well, let's initiate that. Is this an appropriate time to do that?
So generally, because it's a business action of the city, we would add it to the next agenda. But if that's something that the commission wants us to do, we will certainly add that as a business item that is advertised.
Let's do it.
Let's do that because, and then we can notice it and let people, and also have time to think about what it would, how the language would actually be and stuff like that.
Can I respond to one other question you had asked about the height of the parapet wall? I am content to lower the wall, though I don't want to be on the news for somebody going over it. So it concerns me quite a bit to keep it.
Oh, I definitely would not be going over that.
Yeah,
Unless you also have a trampoline, then I can bounce over it.
So ideally,
So I don't know that, 4 feet even might be okay.
I'm pretty.
in some areas we are. We certainly want to vary it. We want character of the structure. The health and safety of people is paramount.
Does the parapet wall have to be solid? Like or can it have some solid see-through component? I'm just curious at this point. I'm not
Yeah,
going
these
to.
are amazing questions.
Under our current code, the purpose of the parapet is to screen the mechanical equipment. So if it's see-through and not screening it, it's not a.
So could you have a see-through outside wall and then you have some other wall screening your mechanical that is not see-through? I'm just
Sure that
curious.
somebody could design
Yeah,
something
I'm sure.
to get around.
I'm getting
that,
out there, but I guess the eyes on the street or eyes on the park doesn't really track. But that was, I think, a misdirection in the benefit of it. But they're going to be there anyway. So
If I can continue to respond to that, I think
go ahead.
that even if you can't see the street, it still improves the relationship that building has with the street. Just anecdotally, having lived in places where there are rooftop patios are a lot more common. It does help when you're at the street level to be able to like hear people that are on a rooftop patio. And so that was part of the argument that I was making. But I agree that, yes, you probably won't be able to see.
Well, you should remember there are people who are a lot shorter than you that may not be able to do that. I'm ready to make a motion. Okay, my glasses on. So this is for a motion PLN PCM 2023-00791. Based on the information presented and discussion, I move that the commission approve this plan development application as recommended by staff.
I'll second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Berry and a second from Commissioner Scheer. Any discussion to the motion? We'll go ahead and take a vote. Commissioner Tuttle.
Yes.
Commissioner Scott.
Yes.
Commissioner Scheer.
Yes.
Commissioner Gale.
Yes.
Commissioner Berry.
Yes.
Commissioner Burrows.
Yes.
Commissioner Kretzik.
Yes.
And the chair also votes yes. That motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Our next item is Liberty Corner Design Review at approximately 1265 South, 300 West. Case number PLN PCM 2023-00952. And Sarah Javoranak is our planner. Sorry for still not learning your name.
Right. Just give me 1 minute here. So thank you, Chair. As you stated, this is a design review proposal for Liberty Corner. The proposed project is located at the intersection of 1300 South and 300 West. It's located in the northeast corner. It includes 6 parcels that will later be consolidated. It's in the CG, or General Commercial Zoning District. It's approximately 2 acres. On the ground floor of the building, the uses proposed are the lobby, leasing office, resident facilities and amenities. There's a proposed daycare, and then parking is located internal to the building. And then on the upper floors, there are 200 residential units. They're affordable units that are serving those with incomes between 30 and 80% AMI. And then on top of the podium deck, there are amenity areas. There are 269 parking stalls proposed internal to the site. As far as the request is for additional height over 75 feet to a maximum of 85 feet. 105 feet is permitted in the zoning district with design review, and the average height would be 77 feet. The second request is for an increase in the maximum front yard setback from 10 feet to a maximum of 16 feet, and staff is recommending approval with conditions. These are the existing conditions along 1300 South and then along 300 West. As far as the standards of review, the project is in the CG zoning district, and then the design review standards in 21A59 also apply. Wanted to note that the project was submitted in September of last year, so the new standards in place with the Downtown Building Heights text amendment apply. As far as staff's key considerations, the proposal is compliant with the adopted plans. One that staff wanted to specifically point out is housing SLC. There are different metrics for affordable housing in the plan, and all of the 200 units, since they're affordable to those at 80% AMI or below, meet that metric. And then there's a second metric for affordable units for those at 30% AMI or below, and 14 of the units would meet that. As far as the design review request itself, it is for building height greater than 75 feet. Previously, before those downtown building height amendments, 65 feet was permitted, and then the maximum height permitted is 105 feet. And with the proposed building, the tallest architectural element is 85 feet, and then it has an average building height of 77. And then the second request is an increase in the maximum front yard setback on 1300 South to up to 16 feet. And that maximum front yard setback was added with the downtown building heights text amendment. There previously was not a maximum setback. And what staff has determined that that applies to the 1300 South facade. And so you can see on the graphic that on the right or the eastern portion of the site, there is a setback of about 10 feet, but then the right-of-way actually narrows as you extend towards 300 West and is about 16 feet at that intersection. So this increased setback would allow for additional space for pedestrians and then between the building and the street. Oops. And as far as public process, early notification notices were sent, an online open house was held, the Ballpark Community Council discussed the proposal at their November meeting, and staff has received 3 email comments that were included with the staff report, and additional emails have not been received. And so staff is recommending approval with the 2 conditions included in the staff report and on the slide. And that concludes staff's presentation. The applicant is here and is able to answer questions.
Let's go ahead and have the applicant come forward. And state your name for the record, please.
Hello, my name is Chris Zarek.
Check to see that the green.
There it is.
Oh, there we go.
That's a bright green, not a light green. Thank you. My name is Chris Zarek. I'm with Cowboy Partners. We are the developer, owner, and eventual operator of this community. As has been mentioned, this is a affordable housing community. It's very specifically been designed and intended for larger family-sized units. And of course, families come in all sorts of configurations, but the homes in Liberty Corner are all 2, 3, and 4 bedroom, with more than half of them being 3 and 4 bedroom. The average unit size is just under 1,100 square feet. You know, designing and developing this building has been, it's a unique community for sure because of the type of homes that it's creating. And it's been a bit of a learning process, just really understanding the meaning of designing for families and the demographic that we are expecting in the community here. And what it means is we have to really communicate to all of our consultants that you can't think of this like a 200-unit building. You know, there will be likely 800 people living in this community. And that's meaningful for the amount of operational spaces that we have, for the amount of common spaces that we have, the amenities that we have, the amenity program that we have, which really has to speak to demographics ranging from babies and toddlers to seniors, because we do expect that our 4-bedroom homes especially will have multi-generational families living in them and have been designed as such. With that also has a physical implication as well. You know, 3 and 4 bedroom apartments are 30, 40, you know, pushing between 40 and 50 feet wide along the window line so that you can have windows and access to light and air for all of the bedrooms that you're creating. And so it really takes a lot of envelope to make this happen. And so, you know, if you were to see the plan that you have, we've had to almost snake this building around the 2-acre site that we have in order to try and get the exposures that we need to really create these homes. And it has the effect of creating a quite massive building. And so a lot of what we have tried to do through the design and massing and materiality of this building is to try and break it down a little bit and you know, create some texture at the ground level so that we can create a pedestrian experience, and then try and break those masses down a little bit so we can make it feel a little bit more like a you know, more like a collection of smaller buildings than one large massive building. I'll speak just briefly before I think I'm finished here to the setbacks. We first designed the building under the old zoning that required 10-foot setbacks, and we decided to keep those. If you've been on site or in this area, you'll notice that the sidewalk is very diminutive. They're very small, right? You know, the 1300 South is a very busy street, has a lot of lanes. There's very little left for pedestrian space, and it's a very loud and busy street. So we felt there was a lot of value on all of our exposures to keeping that setback, creating some public-private space, creating some, area for neighborhood to happen, and giving the building some relief from the traffic that's on 2 of the 3 streets that we're inhabiting. But with that, I'll take any questions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any questions from the commission?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I pass this area all the time. The sidewalk there is very diminutive. I'm curious whether, why you decided on 1300 where you've got that wider setback. I see that you've got your green strip between the building and the sidewalk. Is it possible for the sidewalk to take more of that space? It looks like it's the same width as the rest of that diminutive sidewalk. And I, just knowing from like being a pedestrian here, it's not comfortable, and it would be good to have like a opportunity to like have a barrier between you, even if it's just like grass or whatever, for that extra 6 feet or whatever. I mean, 6 feet on the far
Sure.
end towards the street. Tell me why, if that's a decision you could make, tell me what your thoughts are there. I see that there's trees right now between the sidewalk and where you're at. Is it possible to put those trees on the other end?
So I don't know. I'd have to probably defer to the city as to whether we could, putting the plant strips and the planting that we have there on the far side, on the street side, the curb side, would be putting that in the right of way that we don't necessarily own or control. We are required to have a certain amount of planting, and certainly we want to green up this area and provide that. We are, part of what we're doing along that 1300 South side, we have a number of different areas that open up, especially around the entrances, to create a little bit wider areas. I'd have to look into the drawings to see where the width of the sidewalk right now is maybe 3 feet. If you're lucky, I think we're a little bit wider than that here as we travel through. I'm not opposed to, flipping around the planting and where the pedestrian pathways are, but I don't know that we're fully in control of the space that's not within our site boundary.
Yeah.
Could you walk me into this place if I'm a resident? It looks to me like you only have 2 elevators and a freight elevator for this many people. Is that correct?
We have 3 elevators altogether. We have 2 different lobbies. There's one near the southwest corner on the 1300 South side. And then we have another one with a freight elevator and a regular elevator on the Lucy Avenue side, more in the northeast corner. So we did kind of make that decision to add an elevator. We took that elevator count from a consultant working with Otis or ThyssenKrupp, one of the elevator companies, to kind of come up with how we would best serve the amount of people and not the amount of units that we were expecting here. And then we broke up those lobbies so that we could better serve a pretty large building.
So as I approach this building from the street, I enter through a stairwell, is that correct?
The main entry, so we have entry lobbies on both sides, or on 1300 South and on Lucy. A lot of the 300 West is a daycare use. So there is an entry on the, in fact, I don't know if you can, actually where you see the pink leasing, so that is that leasing office and lobby, that's the entry off of, the main entry off of 1300 South.
Oh, the leasing office is the main entry? You mean
Well,
for the residents?
Yes, there's an office off there. There's a lobby. It's an entry lobby. The leasing manager's office is in all of our communities next to the entry lobby for that main entry.
Okay, so that would be the place where the sign is and where it says, welcome to, whatever.
Sure.
Place
yeah.
where I would be coming if I were Amazon delivering packages.
Mm-hmm. So if you're Amazon delivering packages, if you're, coming to the building from the other side on the Lucy Avenue side, which is
Right.
much slower, we have two different entrances. One that enters directly into the elevator lobby. We also have a second entry more to the west that comes into the mailroom, and the mailroom, of course, kind of it becomes a little bit of a social hub as well. But there's an entry into that mailroom, and then there's also a multi-use court. There's a sport court that we're planning, next to the daycare that will be available to the residents as well. So we have two entrances on that north elevation as well.
So on the ground floor, the orange areas are considered the lobbies. I'm really still
Yes.
having a hard time. So you go through what's called the leasing office here.
Mm-hmm.
You take the long purple hallway down to the elevator lobby, potentially, if I'm visiting somebody.
Yes, if you're,
okay. Or if I'm coming home from school as a child.
mhm. If you're entering off
Or
of
any other
1300s.
pedestrian,
Yeah.
right? Okay. And on the north side, I can enter on where the orange is again. What's the pink next to it?
So and I should say if you're a resident and you have a access fob, right?
Yes.
There's a plaza, a patio as well that,
Oh, I see.
there'd be other entry points into the building. If you're a member of the general public, you're coming into the lobby, the main lobby.
Okay.
That's where
Okay.
you're coming.
There's a lot of walls in here that
Sure.
don't look like they're maybe really walls. And so I'm, just, I don't know why there's, all that there's on the ground floor plan that we have, what the light pink is next to the elevator lobbies and the top,
Sure.
next to the elevators on the,
Yeah.
on the north, I don't know what that is.
so
I mean, one of
that-
them's the trash room, but what are the other ones? And
So
why is
generally,
it sort of, why is this lobby so little? I mean, it's a lot of people, they're all waiting for the elevators because there's not that many elevators. In my building, we have 60 units, we have 2 elevators. So, I mean, it just seems like there's gonna be a lot of people waiting.
Sure.
It just seems like more generous. I mean, you've got a lot of sort of unfocused amenity space, or not unnamed amenity space. We don't really know what that is. It seems to me like more generous lobby space might be a way to make this a better building experience of people come. I'm always looking at how you come in and how you go out of a place, because
Sure.
that is your experience of this building. All of the other spaces, and making that connection, I mean, I guess to the garage. Is there only one level on the garage? Is that right?
There are 2 levels on the
Okay,
garage.
so there's a lower level garage as well. So
Right.
the elevators are also serving the garage level, or is there a separate garage elevator?
No, both the lobbies have access to the street level common space and both garage floors.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
And I should say the purple areas that you see on the south side by the lobby that's on the south. Those are all common amenity areas. Those are open to the residents, right? So that entire
but they're
1300
locked off
south.
from the elevator lobby. So it seems like to me a more generous elevator lobby in both instances is possible. And you know, as a user of a multifamily building, I know that is a very important way of it's an important space. And maybe because I don't understand how the leasing thing works, you know, leasing office space works. I mean, you know, obviously it's going to be a separate office or a set of separate offices in there, right? They're not going to be open air like this, right? So it just seems to me like the entry experience needs some work.
Let's go ahead and open up the public hearing. We have one card from Emery Lorcher. If you or anyone else would like to give public comment, go ahead and approach the microphone. I don't see anyone, so let's check on emails. No emails. We will go ahead and close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission for questions and a motion.
I guess back to the pedestrian experience, I guess this is directed towards staff. Are they maxed out on do they have any flexibility in their green space requirement where they could maybe remove a little bit of green space to increase the sidewalk?
So I want to go ahead and defer to Nick or John on this, since that would involve having sidewalk on their property.
I mean, I think it's something we could do. I mean, in the TSA zone, for example, if you don't have a wide enough sidewalk, we require you to add additional sidewalk on your property to add that. So it can be outside of the public right-of-way. If they were doing things like flipping it and all of a sudden you're wanting trees and benches and things like that in the public right-of-way to act as a barrier between traffic and vehicles and pedestrians, that's something we'd have to work with like engineering and real estate to be able to get some like revocable leases and things. So that kind of stuff I couldn't make a promise on, but I think a wider sidewalk, we could work with them.
And then just wanted to add, so there is a 5-foot landscape yard requirement. And so just looking along the entire length of that 1300 South facade, they are about 150 square feet over that. So it would result in terms of the total square footage required, it would result likely in some loss of landscaping to increase the width of that sidewalk.
I don't know that I'm the perfect person to be able to fully address this, but I know that my pedestrian experience here is terrible. So does anyone else have any thoughts about increasing pedestrian experience, and is that best facilitated by leaving landscaping as it is or creating a safer right-of-way or pass-through for people?
So I'll pipe in. Again, I think this is the eye of the beholder. As somebody who's advocated for wider sidewalks in my neighborhood ad nauseum, they do make a big difference. But one of the things I've noticed, especially on this section by the corner, there's just a fence, right? So it's not even open. You got a fence and you got your little sidewalk. One of the things that I've personally felt is when we open that up, so in areas in my neighborhood where we had, the regular sidewalk, and then we had a parking strip that got landscaped in a way that made it so you could kind of use it and it felt more open. That alone was a huge benefit to feeling more comfortable and feeling that you had a wider space than just, I've got a sidewalk, I've got a road, I got a sidewalk, and I got a fence, or I got a big building. The second building up 13 South, then the fence goes away, and so there's a little bit more breathing room. So some of it's that feeling in my mind. Some of it's a feeling of, is this more open that I have the opportunity to maybe step off to the side? Somebody's coming with a stroller and they need more room. And that I have more ability to move into or away from the road if I need to. So in that regard, I think that this helps that immensely. But I think any attempt or any place where we can widen the sidewalk, even 1 foot, makes a huge difference. But I have personally felt, as I've walked around and thought about how I'm experiencing this and why am I feeling this way, it's a lot of what's happening not on the road side. It's what's happening on the building side, to me, that makes me feel like I'm cramped or this is not pleasant. And then you feel the intensity of the traffic. And 13 South is a lot of traffic. You feel that more often, or you feel it more intensely. And so, I mean, I'm inclined that this plan itself will alleviate a lot of that because of the increased setback, and there is landscaping, and it's not going to be a hedge. It's not going to be an impervious, like another, fence or chain link fence that's there now. That you will be able to have a little bit more movement. And so that can be a de facto widening of a sidewalk. But if you're interested in concrete widening, then that's, never a bad thing. But I think it's more pleasant that we have that setback with some landscaping in a way that provides the feeling like you have more breathing room away from the road. And I also think one thing that will be very, very beneficial is how you've treated the corner. Because the pedestrians are walking to that intersection and they're, walking usually to Walmart. And so how you've opened up that corner, which is currently not open, it is. Fence, like, you have a little bit more breathing room to kind of not feel so trapped. And it's such an inhospitable environment. So I think there's ways in design that this is probably going to achieve what you want. But I also am not against you wanting to maybe try to articulate, widening the concrete sidewalk. Yeah. But then if they do that, then just as a clarifying question, then part of that strip is like they're privately owned and then it's adjacent to the public right of way? Yeah, okay. So it wouldn't be a full public sidewalk.
Yeah. I mean, even like a foot, I think would do like huge things, like 3.5 feet versus like 4.5 feet. Like a stroller and a person can cross with 4.5 feet. But like if there are trees here that are like growing branches into the sidewalk, into the right of way, and then we have 3.5 feet of sidewalk, then I think that's going to drive people away from the building further towards the road.
Well, those trees won't be the type of trees that they'll plant specific trees that won't be doing that. Yeah. They pretty much, the urban forester knows which ones will do that and which ones won't. Either way, I think it's kind of a preference but I think you're right. This is a very inhospitable location for a pedestrian as it currently is. The design that's put before us, which has gone away, I think is going to achieve a lot already of what you're hoping it to do over what's there now. Those are my thoughts, because you asked.
Yeah.
So you got it.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
If I might just give my perspective a little bit on it. I mean, from my perspective as a developer and owner, sidewalks are nice, right? More sidewalk, especially when we have the space, is nice. Landscape is nice, right? That both of those have an appeal, right? And within an urban context, I think they're both kind of required to make a successful neighborhood place. With both of them, you need a certain amount of scale for them to be successful. If you reduce the landscape strip too much, you can't grow anything there that's of any success. And of course, sidewalks can get too narrow as well. So the natural tension is just trying to find the right balance. Honestly, if we were to take some out of the greenscape and put more into the sidewalk. I'm not necessarily opposed to that, and vice versa. I do think the walkway as it stands now has gone from 3 feet or whatever is there, which is, it feels dangerous just walking there. I do believe it's between 5 and 6 feet as we've designed it going forward. So we are increasing the width, and I know that it's 6 feet on the west side because that's the that was part of the work that the city just completed on 300 West, and so that's what I think is there right now.
Okay, then I think if it is like already planned to have more than 3.5 feet, then I don't need to make any recommendations. Thank you for considering that.
I wanted to say a couple things. One, I am very happy to see 4-bedroom apartments in this project, and am hoping if there are any developers or planners listening that they also can put more larger apartments into future plans. And there were some comments about not having retail space on the first floor, but since a big chunk of the first floor is being taken up by the daycare and the playground for the daycare, I feel like that is an even more maybe critical amenity for this building, especially given the number of affordable housing units in it.
I can make a motion. This is for PLN PCM 2023-00762 Liberty Corner. Based on information presented and discussion, I move the commission approve this design review application as recommended by staff.
We have a motion from Commissioner Gale and a second from Commissioner Scott. Any discussion to the motion? We'll take a vote. Commissioner Kratzik.
Yes.
Commissioner Scott.
Yes.
Commissioner Gale.
Yes.
Commissioner Berry.
Yes.
Commissioner Scheer.
Yes.
Commissioner Burrows.
Yes.
Commissioner Tuttle.
Enthusiastic, yes.
Thank you. And the chair also votes yes. That passes unanimously.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Dr. Scheer, I looked at those. I looked at it. You got it.
Our next item is Roland Hall St. Mark's Design Review at approximately 1481 East Sunnyside Avenue. Case number PLN PCM 2023-00836. And our planner is Diana Martinez.
Good evening. I joked last time and said you saved the best for last, and here we are again. So this is an application by Roland Hall St. Mark's for design review. The request is for a height increase modification up to, and we'll get into that later, up to 60 feet for a new school building. Just to orient you with the map, I know it's small, but there's a lot going on in it. The subject property, the address property is what's outlined in blue. The rec soccer fields are up front. That is zoned OS, which is open space. The back portion, I don't see my cursor, sorry. Oh, there it is. Okay, the back north half of that is zoned institutional. That's where the proposal is for the new school. To the west of the property, the subject property, is East High's football stadium. To the north is Mount Olivet Cemetery. And then going to the, well, direct east is the existing Roland Hall St. Mark's elementary campus. And then north of that, you start getting to the U of U property. Staff is recommending approval of the application by the Planning Commission. So this is a design review application. The two design standards that you're looking at tonight are going to be, one, the required design standard for the institutional zoning district, and that is the lighting. They are meeting that, the definitions up on the board. The second one is the standard from the zoning district itself, and that's the maximum building height. The building height shall be limited to 35 feet. Anything above that, they have to increase the side yards 1 foot. This is the site plan. I'm sorry, I don't think this is in the staff report. This came in a little bit late. The setbacks required for this property are closer to 20. They're giving you 56 on one side, 96 on the back side, 119 on the west side. Just to briefly, quickly go through the elevations, just so you can, what we're talking about when we're talking about increasing the limit up to 60. There's a lot of different elevations to this one building. There's a lot of block sections of this building, so different types of blocks, different types of building sections. And a lot of parapets are included in those heights. So in a lot of the cases, it's not quite 60, it's somewhere between 53 and 58. In talking with the applicant initially, they still wanted to have some movement because of equipment and things that were going to go into the building later. So that's why the height, why we proposed it to the 60, or why they proposed it to the 60. And I'll let you talk to them about it a little bit more in detail. So this is the east elevation. This is going to be the entrance of the main building. Here, the height with a parapet is at 43 feet. The south elevation that would be looking from Sunnyside, although it's 380 feet back, the high point would be 58. And again, that's going to include two different parapet parts, one for a theater building and then one for a gym building. So that's where that height discretion comes in, if you will. This is the west elevation. So again, it's 58 feet proposed, but again, there is a parapet in there. And then likewise, the north elevation looking from the cemetery. These are in your staff report. These are the elevations. I think the most important one for tonight is probably the bottom left. That's going to be your view from Sunnyside Avenue. Before I get into the dialogue on the screen, I just want to point out that one of the issues being the traffic issue, if you can see it, it's pretty light, but because the building is 380 feet off the street, most of the traffic is going to be stacked within the property. And so that alleviates a lot of traffic having to be stacked onto Sunnyside Avenue. When this property was rezoned to the institutional and open space zoning, there was a development agreement placed on this property, and it required $100,000 to be contributed from Roland Hall St. Mark's for traffic calming and pedestrian safety. And that will be due at the time of submitting for building permit. There is a traffic calming plan for Sunnyside Avenue in process, and the community has been and will continue to be involved in this process. I think it's important that the Planning Commission look not at the traffic issues. Those will be addressed. Those would be addressed even if this application wasn't before you. So just wanted to really look at the design review standards in this application. And finally, the recommendation based on the information and findings in the staff report and the discussion, the staff recommends that the Planning Commission approve this design review petition.
Thank you.
The applicant is here and they do have a
Okay,
presentation.
let's have the applicant come up. And remember to state your names for the record.
Yep, my name is Mick G. I'm the head of school at Roland Hall. You can speak, can't you?
I'm Doug Speckert. I'm a project manager with EHDD. We're the architect.
I just want to say thank you. It's my first trip to the commission. You guys work late and hard, and I've been watching on TV next door in the other room. It's some tricky stuff, so thank you for staying late, looking at our project. Doug is going to go through the main details of the project and the architectural features and technical aspects and things like that. I've got a minute or two to talk about why we need this now, and start with the short history of the school. Is that it has a long history. We are 156 years old, so 29 older than Utah, the state, and we've had various locations. Started off in a bowling alley, and then St. Mark's Cathedral basement, and then the school finally came together on the Avenues campus, which is where the Magdalene Choir School is now. As the school population grew in the 1980s, it became around 800, and we outgrew that campus. And then the school split. The lower school students stayed in that campus, and then the upper and middle school students occupied the Lincoln campus, which is the one that I'll say a little bit more about in a second, because that's the one we're looking to move out of. But we bought that in 1984 from the Salt Lake City School District. I have spoken to a couple of people who were around at that time who said they sold it to us because they thought it had gone past its useful life as a school. But we bought it for 40 years, and we've been in there and doing magic. In 2002, we secured the land on Guardsman that we're going to look at today, and our lower and beginning school, so students aged 3-year-old through 5th grade, are on that campus at South 20, South Guardsman. And the school has always had a goal to reunite. It's been over 40 years to bring all the students, pre-K through 12, back onto one campus. And so if you, did you go through all my...
I skipped a couple of your earlier ones.
Okay, well, so the bottom line is that our middle and upper school students right now on the Lincoln campus are in a building that was built, we think, in 1921. And it was built for the school system that was created in 1893. It has served its purpose well, both for the school district and for us, but it was built for an era where school has moved and education has moved on. It doesn't have a lot of the spaces that you will see in modern public schools and things like that. And more importantly, it's not going to be able to serve us in the future as we think about our aspirations programmatically and a little bit of growth in the high school. We intend to keep the middle and lower schools the same, but high school grow from about 75, 80 kids per grade to about 110. That'll take us about 6 or 7 years. So this is the site that we are looking at. We secured the land in 2010, the additional land behind the lower and beginning school campus, and that is the space now that we're seeking to unite the campus finally and bring back on one campus again. So I'll let Doug go through the schematics, and then we'll take questions.
Sure, and I'll probably go quickly, and then you can ask questions, and we can loop back to anything. So as Diana mentioned, the parcel, when it was acquired, was kind of split into two portions. So the open space portion that the soccer field occupies is zoned open space, has to stay that way forever. The northern portion was rezoned as institutional, and there are restrictions in there about the amount of open space area, I think was the difference in the definitions earlier, that is required to be maintained on that site. And so we're carefully observing those restrictions in the site plan development. That does somewhat limit our freedom of development of the site. And so also, as Diana mentioned, we do have a kind of a long traffic access road and then a large drop-off circle here. And those were part of a pretty intensive traffic study process to make sure that we were minimizing the impacts of traffic entering and exiting the campus onto Sunnyside, and also the impact on the intersection of Sunnyside and Guardsman. Just really quickly, the idea about how the traffic will flow, all these black arrows are really the way the school operates now. The lower school drops off here on the north side of the site, and then the beginning school drops off on the north side of the site, and then the lower school, which is the elementary school age kids, drop off on the south side of the existing site. All the middle and high school drop-offs will happen here at the new traffic aisle, so off of the Sunnyside access. And then there's parking around the edge of the building. The building is oriented in sort of three sort of sections, and Diana kind of alluded to the fact that we've kind of sized each section just for the program required in there. So working from the north down, the upper school wing, there's 3 floors of mostly academic space. We have a kind of a landscape courtyard that separates that wing from the next part of the building, with a 1-story dining pavilion that connects those 2 wings. Then we have a middle school wing that has classrooms on the upper level, performing arts classrooms on the lower level, and in this corner that's kind of actually in the middle of the new campus is what we're calling the Learning Commons. That's what we probably used to all call a library when we went to school, and that's kind of a key space for the school programmatically and looking forward. And then moving south, we have some of the specialty spaces, including a double height theater. That's the tallest element on the project, and that's the area where we are approaching that 60-foot height. We've just concluded the design development stage of the project, and so the reason that we asked for 60 feet is because as we go through the final coordination of structural and elements, we're just we want to make sure that there isn't a reason that we have to increase those parapet heights by a little bit as that development continues. And then continuing to move south, we have the double height gym. So it's one open volume in there, but the height requirement in the gym is 20 plus feet for clearance for the playing court, and then there's equipment and structure above that. This is really just cutting the lid off and letting you see some of the way the program is laid out. So just really quickly again, upper school on the north bar, a landscape courtyard on either side of this 1-story dining pavilion, and I'll talk about this more in a minute, but the site has about 30 feet of grade difference between the east side and the west side. So part of that courtyard is is sort of transiting that grade difference. And here's a site section that actually gets at that in a little more detail. So the issue is that 60-foot height being measured on the west side of the building is already substantially lower than the existing grade on the east side. So that's how we get up to that high number. But the parapet heights on the east side are actually really relatively consistent with the total heights of the existing lower school building. Diana already mentioned that we kind of have a facade that is organized around these different program spaces, and we are using different materials to kind of also help key people to what kinds of programs are happening. So at the ground level, our primary material is brick. We then have some double height brick that's in some of the sort of more public program areas. We have plaster on the upper floor for the primarily for the classroom wings, and then the theater is currently a metal panel material. And then these were in the staff report, so I'll just go through them really quickly, but these are just the views. This is from just north of the Sunnyside sidewalk, looking over the soccer fields and looking at that south facade. This is a view from further west on Sunnyside. You can see this is actually the corner of our theater volume. Most of the gym kind of disappears in the existing planting, and we're really not impacting the skyline much from that perspective. That's mostly a factor of that long offset from the roadway. And then these are in the property. This is looking across the planted area that's in the middle of the traffic drop-off, main entry here to the right, and then a secondary entry to the performing arts and gym lobby on the left. And then this is looking from the lower school campus at a kind of a promenade that connects the lower school and the new campus here. So the main entrance is again here on the right, and then looking straight ahead is the secondary entrance to the theater and the gym.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from the commission? We'll go ahead and open the public hearing. We have 2 cards. The first one is Janet Hemming. And if you are representing Yale Crest, we will give you 5 minutes.
I don't need that much time, but thank you. Good evening, commissioners. The Yellcrest Neighborhood Council supports this request. Roland Hall is a great asset to this city and adds much to its educational fabric. We've had a chance to discuss the request with planner Diana Martinez and Headmaster Mick, is it G or G?
G.
G. And so we understand their need for expansion. Regarding the height extension request, this is not objectionable because of the way the property slopes down, and it takes away a little bit of the impact of that height. But there is a concern, and Diana pointed it out, about traffic. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Sunnyside Avenue. It's a very heavily traveled street. Yellcrest is right across from the school. We see a lot of speeders. We've got a lot of cars going up Sunnyside to get to the Veterans Administration Hospital, the University of Utah, Research Park, and Foothill Boulevard. And now we're going to add more schools, more students in cars, and staff, as well as parents. Last summer, there were 3 serious accidents. 2 were hit and runs that resulted in serious hospitalization of 2 individuals, and then there's another 2-car collision where one of the cars flipped on its roof. But our greatest concern of all, if you understand the matrix of Sunnyside Avenue, is cars coming out of the property trying to make a left-hand turn. And putting a sign up there is not going to stop anybody from doing that. They're going to have to go across a 2-lane road and get into the eastbound lane. And if you look, imagine that you're at that spot. There's a hill, and you're coming up from 13th East. It's a blind spot, and we're very concerned with someone trying to get across 2 lanes of traffic into that extensive other 2 lanes going in the other direction, and we see a lot of serious consequences with that. We also learned that 83 students who attend Roland Hall, which is a great thing, live in Yellcrest. But knowing kids, as we all do, the intention that they might want to run across the street just to go from where we are, because we're literally across the street, to get to the school. We're very concerned about this confluence of cars that speed, heavy traffic, kids, and these traffic situations. So I understand, and Diana pointed this out very carefully to us, that you're dealing with a height extension request, and this is an auxiliary matter. And we're very fond of Roland Hall and want to see the project go forward. But we also understand the unintended consequences that might happen with this. And so I don't know if you can add a footnote, a condition. I don't know what your terminology is, but we need to seriously have some traffic calming or some sort of traffic control measures that are desperately needed in that area. Thank you. Thank you for your service.
Thank you. Our other card is Mary O'Connell. State your name for the record, and you'll have 2 minutes.
My name's Mary O'Connell. I'm sorry about my possessed telephone. That was my phone. So I'm a member of the Yellcrest Neighborhood Council. I'm also the chair of the Friends of Sunnyside Park, and I live on Sunnyside. I live directly across from the park. I was also a pediatric intensive care nurse for 38 years. So when I look at traffic and speed, I have a much different view, unless you all are in medicine, than a lot of people here. I do know what speed does to bodies, taking care of them. If I had an hour, I could tell you a lot of gross stories. I'm really, really concerned about the traffic on Sunnyside. I was home the night the car hit another truck and flipped, and there was a baby in the back seat. My husband went out the morning the biker, all of this was in a 1-week period in June where the biker was hit in the intersection of Guardsman, where someone was coming up Sunnyside trying to turn left. No one walks to school. I mean, Jan talked about a kid might try to run across the road and not use the crosswalk. No one walks to school. None of the parents in the neighborhood will let their kids cross Sunnyside, at Guardsman, Greenwood, whichever side of the road you want to call it. The road is so dangerous. I've been working with Yale Crest since at least 2001, trying to calm our road. So the fact that there's supposedly something in progress, well, it's been in progress forever. The speed limit is 30. No one drives 30. And where Jan's talking about coming up that hill, we have friends who live there. Their cars have been totaled by the speed. So I think we need an island, so that no one can turn left going east. Because as Jan said, they are going to avoid a sign that says don't turn left. And the speed is so fast, and there's going to be a lot more accidents. So thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to give public comment? Have we received any emails? Yes, we have received a couple. The first is from Brittany Young. Dear members of the Salt Lake City Planning Commission, I'm writing to express my strong opposition to Roland Hall's request to increase building height to 60 feet on their property. As a concerned resident of the community, I believe that such an adjustment would have adverse effects on the Yellcrest Historic District and the surrounding areas. The property in question is situated adjacent to the Yellcrest Historic District, a neighborhood of rich historical significance. Allowing a 60-foot high building on this property to create a boxed-in feeling separating the historic district from the University of Utah campus, with which the neighborhood has a historical continuity. This separation would be detrimental to the overall character and charm of the Yellcrest Historic District. Furthermore, the 60-foot buildings would obstruct the views of significant landmarks, including the University of Utah, Rice Eccles Stadium, the foothills, and the State Capitol building. These scenic vistas contribute to the beauty and identity of our community, and the construction of tall buildings would inevitably compromise these views for both residents and visitors alike. Preserving the visual integrity of our community is essential to maintaining the unique and historical atmosphere that makes Yellcrest special. Allowing such a significant deviation from the existing building regulation would set a precedent that could have far-reaching consequences for the overall aesthetics and cohesion of the neighborhood. I urge the Planning Commission to consider the long-term impact of approving Roland Hall's request for increased building height. It is crucial to prioritize the preservation of our historic neighborhood, scenic views, and the overall character of our community. Thank you for your time and consideration of this matter. I trust the Planning Commission will make a decision that aligns with the best interests of the community. I apologize, I'm not getting choked up. I just have this cough that won't go away. So the second one is from Daniel Thomas. And this is, I write to express my vehement opposition to Roland Hall's audacious request to increase the building height to an astonishing 60 feet on their property. As a resident and attorney with the residents directly across the street from this proposed development, I find this proposal not only objectionable, but also an affront to the very essence of our community. The property in question abuts the Yellcrest Historic Neighborhood, a site of considerable historical importance. Allowing a towering 60-foot structure on this parcel will not only disrupt the harmony of the historic district, but also have a profoundly negative impact on my property directly across the street. The proposed monstrosity threatens to obstruct the views for my residents, which I have invested significantly in and hold. Furthermore, the blatant disregard for the historical continuity between the Yellcrest and University of Utah campus is disheartening. The proposed height would create an imposing barrier, severing the visual connection that has existed for a century. This insensitivity to the neighborhood's historical fabric is, quite frankly, unacceptable. The prospect of 60-foot structures in such close proximity fills me with righteous indignation. These looming edifices would not only block the views of the University of Utah, Rice Eccles Stadium, and the foothills, but also cast an oppressive separation of my property from its surroundings, diminishing its value and my quality of life.
I implore the Planning Commission to consider significant and personal repercussions this decision would have on my property and the community at large. It is not just a matter of historical preservation, but a blatant infringement on the rights and comforts of the residents directly affected by this ill-conceived proposal. Your decision on this matter will undoubtedly change the future landscape of our community. I trust that you'll carefully consider the impacts on the immediate neighbors, including myself, and reject Roland Hall's request for increased building height.
Thank you. We will go ahead and bring it back to the, close the public hearing and bring it back to the Planning Commission for questions, discussion, and a motion. But I did want to jump in and say that for the purposes of this design review, we won't be able to put any conditions relating to traffic on it, but I would like to encourage everyone from the neighborhood and Roland Hall to continue to work with the city on making the necessary traffic calming that we need for that area.
I wanted to say I appreciate people taking every single opportunity you can to complain about traffic, because the fact that we're in danger from traffic is outrageous, and it could be fixed by fixing the roads. I mean, there's infrastructure stuff you could do. So continue to complain about it, because it shouldn't be so dangerous. And I think there are some cases where a 60-foot tall building on the edge of this property would be an affront to the neighborhood that's across the street and the views and all that kind of stuff. But I think that this one's thoughtful. I'm in support of this project because I think it meets the requirements and standards and stuff like that. And I would make a motion, unless somebody wants to talk.
I want to talk.
Still talking, sorry, we're still talking.
So can I ask you, Diana, actually a question? You said in the beginning that traffic was off the table. Can you add again?
It's not off the table. However, if this application were meeting the 35 feet, it would be dealt with through the transportation anyway, through the building permit. So the transportation department is looking at this. They do have a calming project in process. And that's why I was trying to get you to look at the standards, because the other part will be addressed and it is in process. And there is public involvement in that. So it's not like we're trying to exclude the community at all.
Right.
So
I just have one question about, not about that in particular, but could you go back to the site plan that shows the in and out and this sort of parking and so that was that one. Thank you. No, that was it. You had it.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. So it says there's no on the entrance from Guardsman. It says that there's no through circulation. Yeah. It would seem to me that, and this is, I mean, you may have. I'm sure you have a very good reason for doing that, for blocking that. Can you tell me what that is?
Mm-hmm. So it's really, the school is really wanting to make sure that the traffic going through the beginning school drop-off zone with 3-year-olds
it's because it's the youngest kids, yeah,
is reduced to the minimum possible. So the current plan is that only beginning school parents will use that portion of the drive. We will have a gate. You know, we'll need to maintain access here because it's part of our fire lane access. But there'll be operational measures, probably a locked gate that then has a Knox box to prevent any traffic circulation on that pathway in regular use. I'll just say that I think where your head is going, which is the same place our traffic consultant went, which is if you can split the traffic load between two spots, you'd be better off. But there's a strong operational concern about that.
Yeah, I thought that might be the case. And no one wants to run over 3-year-olds, but no one wants to run over 18-year-olds either. So, I mean,
and then the other, I'll just say, may not have been clear, but there's a grade separation between this existing parking. I'm sorry.
No, we were laughing about running over 18-year-olds.
I have a 15-year-old. So
yeah, okay,
I'm not quite there yet, but you know.
Right. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh no, it's okay.
Do students park at the school? Will they?
They will. Yeah.
So right now it's really limited. So many of your students can't park. They park in the neighborhood at the current campus. But here we're providing a lot more parking.
A lot more. So yeah, I have them written down. We have, the current campus, we have 106 spaces total. And then this one, I think you have 238 up there. There's probably about 40 as well, regularly not used on the current lower school campus. And so, a big increase in parking. A somewhat increase in, drivable age kids, because the high school might go from, we're 325 now, we want to be at 440. If you think of juniors and seniors, a decent portion of those will drive. So there's an increase in driving age students, but we also try to accommodate that with both taking cars off of the street and increasing parking spaces considerably.
I'm pretty confident that you can fix the right turn problem with some kind of barrier in the middle of the road. But I'm not that confident that students from the neighborhood won't actually try to run across Sunnyside. And even if there is a barrier, they'll try to hop over it and do all kinds of mischievous things. I would, if a barrier does occur there, I would like to and this is just my input on the traffic problem, because I can't help it, I'm sorry, is that there be a traffic island there of some kind that would provide refuge for somebody crossing over, so that they would actually have a place to hide or stand if the traffic got really bad on both sides. Having said that, I think that I think that the 60-foot height issue is not an issue, particularly because of the slope of the site, because of the way it's set back from the street, because the next door is a stadium, the northern next door is people who aren't going to complain anymore. So that's although you never know. We get a lot of complaints.
One typo I just noticed, the motion sheet references the wrong application, but the wording of the motion itself is correct.
Typos in schools are a crime, so we...
Yes. I also had one question. This is more out of just curiosity, but we recently opened up transit passes for students in Salt Lake City, and I was curious whether that extends to Rowland Hall students or if that's just for Salt Lake School District students.
I don't know the answer. I've worked in schools that have done that. They've been public schools. I don't know if they have access to, different cities I've worked in. If you pay taxes, you get busing. This is not one of them. We do our own busing, so I don't know. But it's something we can look into.
Mr. Chair, I'm willing to make a motion.
A second.
Just
Sorry. It's late, okay.
Before you make that motion, just be aware that
I got it.
Motion sheet is wrong, even the case number.
Yeah, I got it. Okay, this is going to be for PLN PCM 2023-00836, right? Yep. And based on the information presented in discussion, I move that the commission approve this design review application as recommended by staff.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Berry and a second by Commissioner Kratzik. Any discussion to the motion? We'll go ahead and take a vote. Commissioner Tuttle.
Yes.
Commissioner Scott.
Yes.
Commissioner Scheer.
Yes.
Commissioner Gale.
Yes.
Commissioner Berry.
Yes.
Commissioner Burrows.
Yes.
Commissioner Kratzik.
Yes.
And the chair also votes yes. That passes unanimously.
Can I make a comment real quick?
Go ahead.
Congratulations on that first motion. The Salt Lake City School District, every student does get a free UTA pass, and their guardians and parents as well. So everybody who's associated with Salt Lake City School District should get a free UTA pass and use it. But private schools, no. But public schools, yes.
Thanks for the clarification. Since we've already knocked out items 5 and 6, we can go ahead and adjourn. And thanks for everyone pushing hard through the long meeting.
Thank you. Thanks for staying late. Thank you. Thank you.